Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trick from Mushoku Tensei Drama's Reincarnation novel series. We're on Volume 23, Chapter 9. And Soldat's here. Soldat just comes out of nowhere. I literally just talked him into existence. Back here talking about Sarah getting with Soldat, and then suddenly he's literally in the same town. And what was funny is I'm like, don't have them somehow get together like right then and there, because that would be like super cheesy after my cheesy prediction there. It could still happen. I mean, it talks about the idea of him possibly retiring at some point, and then, I don't know, maybe that'll happen, and then Sarah gets with him, and that's how that can happen. We'll see, we'll see, but anyways, going to be an interesting set of chapters. I think these ones are pretty long, and I know the last extra chapter is pretty long as well, so I'm assuming I'll probably do 9-10 and then do EX chapter by itself. Unless I can condense that a lot, it's probably going to be its own thing. It's a pretty long chapter. I'm pretty sure I know what's in it, but we'll see when we get there. We're going to start with 9 and 10 for now. But hey, guys, thank you guys so much for dropping by for the premiere. Hey, chat, hope you guys are doing well. Thank you guys so much for your support. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your kind words. And yes, as per usual, thank you for all those that support the channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. It means a great deal to me. Last week I had Spud Monkey with 2 months membership, No Guard with a super, Gearless with a massive super like usual. Thank you so much, Gearless. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for the 8-month as well for the membership. Nathaniel with a super, Totally Not an Eel with a super, Rose Moist with 2 supers. Thank you so much, Rose Moist. Inferno Torch with a whole bunch of like rapid fire supers. Thank you so much as usual. Thank you for your support. It means so much to me. Mr. Sunshine with a super. Thank you so much. Just in Time with a just in time super for our goal that we were going for there, which was kind of funny. Thank you so much. And finally, Juan Warrior with 4 months. I hope I'm saying Juan right. It might be Juan, but either way, thank you guys. It means so much to me. You guys are freaking amazing. Love it so much. But anyways, with that said, I don't think I have anything to go over. We did have a little bit of discussion in the last Super Mushoku Monday about the fact that it never really dawned on me that there's no like actual like hierarchy as system. Well, I mean, there's a hierarchy system, but there's not like a, you know, people have to be only in certain tiers and they can fight for those positions with magic. And I guess my assumption there really is, okay, so you have North God is the only one that seems like you can have more than one North God, but everyone else, only one person could be there, and they have to be defeated or their underlings have to take it over or whatever. But with magic, it's never the case. Like, anybody could be different tiers of magic. It's not like they're fighting for it. And my assumption that I came to, my conclusion that I came to is really just how it seems like magic is trying to be different, or at least the university itself. And there could be an element of the University of Magic almost being sort of a common mind with a lot of magicians. And the idea they don't really care to have the same conformities that the sword styles have. Because, I mean, that was like every single speech that they had at the university. It was like this idea of, we're going to be different. We're not going to go to those conventions where magic could be used for more things than just killing. It's going to be things that are useful and whatnot. And we're searching for those different things. I don't know that I can necessarily say the University of Magic is like the end-all be-all for the message of the mages, because technically with Barrier and Divine Magic, Millis has control of that. Like, they're sitting like their own confines, but that's more of an idea of like keeping their own secrets to themselves. It seems like for the majority of everything else, it seems like magic is sort of open air. Like, you can have it if you want it. You can find somebody that teaches you, they're going to teach it to you. It's not like you have to go to this one location to learn magic. There's different places you can learn magic. So it's kind of interesting how magic itself is so not in those molds, and maybe that's because it is historically younger than swordsmanship, at least in this side of the universe, or this world, the human world, because technically the humans got it from the elves and they started kind of advancing it from there. That could be why, is that it's relative to swordsmanship in this world, it's much younger, thus it hasn't gotten to those confines, or just the fact that it takes so much mana that it's harder to get to those higher level tiers because it costs so much freaking mana and not many people are going to have that. That could all be reasons, just for like how accessible it is and just how many people actually know the spells. It's just more of an aspect that's kind of curious that we've never addressed this yet. Like, why is there not like, okay, I want to become the water god. Well, I got to go seek out the water god and beat the water god because otherwise I can't be the water god. It's just not really a thing. It's kind of interesting. Anyways, that all said, we got some juicy stuff to get into, and hopefully we can get through all this. If not, I might just cut off the 10th chapter halfway. We'll see. I like to say that beforehand. That way we get through it. I'm tricking the system in my own brain. If I talk about it beforehand, we'll get through it. But some really juicy stuff's in chapter 10. I think that's the big problem with getting through all this, but we'll see. Let's dive into it. Chapter 9, a North God, a Mercenary, and more. These chapters are getting lazy anymore. I'm sorry. Can I say that? We're getting lazy with the chapter titles now. Come on. We're just going to, okay, these are the things that we're running into. That's the chapter title. Rudius and Eris began looking for the missionary knights they encountered earlier. Rudius doubted Geese was here, but following up on a lead could get them valuable information. It could be a trap. It's a trap! But Rudius couldn't see Geese laying one like this. It was a total coincidence they came across that info to begin with. Nothing's a coincidence when it comes to the man god, dude. Nothing's a coincidence. I mean, that was kind of like my whole prediction with this whole scenario, and obviously doesn't play out like I was kind of assuming here. My prediction for the scenario is the idea that because he has such a strong destiny, he sort of has to, the man god would have to use somebody else to sort of push him in direction. And yes, we kind of see that's seemingly going to be the case coming up. He's got to use somebody else that Rudius would have to push out of that destiny, push away from that line to get through. That's like when they were kind of laying it out. Everything in order to push him away from his destination had to be like a series of events that would slowly push him away from that path of destiny. Reese wouldn't expect him to do something funny when the North God had already had high chances of being one of the man god's disciples, meaning Rudius braced and readied himself for a potential fight. No, Rudius felt Geese would attack when he was more relaxed. He wanted his guard down before attacking. I think it sort of implied that Geese wouldn't really do something like that, but I mean, yeah, he's a trickster. He's going to do something really kind of crafty with the whole situation, but he's also very upfront and straightforward, like it's a Jinx thing. But that was more the man god style than Geese. Exactly. I agree there. Still, the missionary knights should have apprehended the person that looked like him. Problem was, he didn't know where to find them. He should have asked where their offices were. I told you already, I'm not selling out my pals. As they walked, Rudius heard a voice, a low, almost bestial, full of resolve. He swore he heard the voice before. I have no intentions of paying you. In the name of Milis, I am demanding you hand that demon over. Rudius found two groups squared off on either side of the street, glowering at each other. One side presumably mercenaries, the other side missionary knights. The knights had only 10 people, and the mercenary bound outnumbered them 2-1. Still, the missionary knights showed no intention of backing down. One part was their unwavering confidence in their own strength, it seemed. They also had absolute faith in the righteousness of their cause. Yeah, fanatics. Yeah? Then let me spell it out for you in a different way. I don't backstab my pals. One of the mercenaries was a man who looked like a street thug, who slid into adulthood without any change in his life. He was sharp, narrow eyes, and a familiar face. It looked older than Rudius remembered. He'd even grown a mustache. Mr. Soldat! It was most definitely Soldat Heckler. Crazy to see after running into Sarah before. Yeah, seems pretty convenient that you run into both of these people at the same time. Like, why don't we have the rest of the people that are still alive just suddenly showing up out of Volume 7 out of nowhere? Rudius owed him a heck of a lot. When his ED first reared its head, Soldat had done a lot to look after him. It sure brought back memories, seeing him and Sarah. Soldat grunted at him, narrowing his eyes. Who are... Oh, hold it. I recognize that face. It's been a while. Yeah, I'm busy, kid. Save it for later. Cool, but I'm kind of busy. He turned back to the missionary knights. Explain what's going on? Well, these guys suddenly showed up out of nowhere, demanding we hand over one of our own, even though we ain't done nothing. So that's it. If you haven't done anything, then what's the issue with handing them over? The missionary knights aren't going to threaten anybody without a good reason. You dummy. Of course they would. These are Milis' missionary knights, and they want us to hand over a demon. Even if they don't kill him, I wouldn't put it past them to take one or two of his eyes out. Yeah, that's like one of those aspects of like, really, you do have to every now and then remember who you're kind of, whose power you're using. Like, yes, the blessed child's great and everything, but like, there's a lot of crazy people in Milis, and they don't treat demons very well. You got to remember that when you're kind of saying, it's all right. It's the missionary knights. Dude, it's the missionary knights. They're cool. We cool. They're cool with you because you have that piece of paper. Rudius realized they were under his orders then. Soldat did have a point. If a group of demon expulsionists dragged off their comrade, he might not come back in one piece. Perhaps he'd been too hasty. While it did occur to him, he didn't really mind if they had given Geese a beatdown. He's like, yeah, I guess it would have been fine if they would have done that too. Geese, but not some random dude. The fact that it turned out to be Soldat's companion never crossed his mind. If Soldat and Geese were in cahoots, he'd have to face him as well. Not something he liked. That would suck. Yeah, that would suck. That would really suck. Who's the demon they're trying to take? Him, over there. Soldat motioned over to someone, a demon with a face of a monkey. The hell do you want? The man questioned as he snarled at Rudius. It wasn't Geese. Similar, but this guy was way more ripped than Geese. He was more like a warrior than a swordsman. He resembled Goliad more than Geese. Yeah, that's kind of one of those interesting things of like noting right here. It's like, yeah, technically Geese is a demon, and this seems like this is actually a beast folk. I think they even say it's a beast folk. It's like one of those really crappy things that you have to deal with, the idea that there's a possibility that a lot of beast folk are often, and I think they kind of mentioned that idea when they were getting to Millis, this idea that some people kind of still have a problem with even seeing beast folk as anything but demons as well. He resembled Goliad way more than Geese. Given the situation, there was fear in the man's eyes. He knew they were up against missionary knights. Still, he stood his ground, ready to fight. He was exact opposite of Geese in every way. It's like, yeah, Geese would run away. This dude is definitely not Geese. The guy was a gorilla. Geese was more of a chimpanzee. It made Ruius wonder if he was of the same tribe. He was pretty sure that Geese was the only surviving member of the Nuka tribe. You, what's the name of your tribe? I'm Glaze of the Roka tribe, and I ain't afraid just because you guys are the missionary knights. Ruius wondered who this guy was kidding. He was terrified. His knees were knocking together. But Ruius would clear things up. Hey, he's brave, and you have no affiliation with Geese of the Nuka tribe?
Geese? Well, yeah. Guess I did used to be a party with the guy, but hold it. Don't tell me he's gone and started crap again. I'm so sick of this. Just because the two of us look alike. How come I gotta be mistaken for him all the time? The Roka tribe's not even a demon tribe. It's a beast tribe.
This guy's so pissed. Like, damn it, again? Again? Damn it. Well, he wasn't Geese. If anything, he was a fellow victim of his trickery. Yeah, I would hate to have any sort of resemblance to Geese. That would suck. Because, I mean, if how much, like, he goes around and, like, does a lot of gambling, especially. Like, gosh dang, dude. Finding Geese here would have been too easy. All right, I understand. Allow me to speak to them.
Speak to them? They ain't the type to listen to. Hey.
Pardon me, but which one of you did I meet with recently? That would be me. Pardon, but are you acquainted with this man? Coincidentally, I am. And if I might add, the demon they have with them is not the one I'm looking for.
He's not?
He seemed puzzled, as if he couldn't comprehend that being possible. But it's a demon. It's a demon, that's all that matters, right? Let's kill it. He claims he's not a demon, but a beast folk anyways. Regardless of misunderstanding, I appreciate your assistance in the matter. With that, problem solved. Reese pressed his fist against his chest and lowered his head to the man. He and the rest of the knights did the same thing before taking their leave. Looks like you've become more charming since the last time I saw you. Reese questioned if he was charming. All Reese had done was clean up his own mess. Regardless, they confirmed their suspicion. The man spotted in Hammer Polka was not Geese. You knew it wasn't going to be that easy. You just knew it wasn't going to be that easy. Soldat was part of the Thunderbolt clan. Leader of the party, step leader. Their clan, one of the biggest adventure clans in the world, had recently ordered all their members to gather in Hammer Polka. Anyone would wonder why this large clan was gathered here. But first, a bit of why enormous clans were formed in the first place. Mercenary companies were one of the few stable, secure business ventures in the world. Most clans were formed to provide mutual support between parties. What requests one party couldn't complete on their own could be shared between affiliate parties. That's actually very interesting. I mean, obviously, we're getting into a lot about how clans are formed and everything like that right here. It's like a big like info dump, which I love, by the way. I love this stuff. I love when it's like, okay, let's talk about how all this stuff works and how it's important to our world. But obviously with clans, I obviously think of like administrators, somebody that will often kind of oversee a bunch of parties and kind of move people around. But one cool thing right here is to talk about the aspect of like, yeah, if one party can't complete a quest, yes, they get penalties for it. So it's kind of cool to have at least somebody else that can kind of step in and take it over for them so it doesn't look bad on the clan itself or the person themselves and everybody benefits in the end. Yes, it does take somebody from somewhere else and they basically have to double up with one particular request, but there's still a benefit in the end. Or this simply, if you have a request that's too tough, you just bring in multiple parties is really what it is. This method also presented less danger for those involved. Exactly. More people involved with one single request. Thunderbolt's founding began when 3 S-rank parties operated in the 3 Magic Nations, deciding to join hands with one another to conquer a labyrinth. That I could see huge with that, because typically with a lot of parties, they're small. You don't want a huge party walking around doing requests in a town. You usually want to keep your party decently small because the requests only pay so much. You're not going to go up to that request board and constantly have like high dollar value requests that a group of 20 people are going to get paid for. It's often going to be a really small request to, like, I don't know, take down a few wolves or something like that. And you can, yes, the whole 20 party's going to wipe that out quickly, but the pay is not going to feed everybody and have everybody have a place to stay that night. But when it comes to finally, when you're strong enough and you decide to go to a labyrinth, your party's not going to handle that. Like, your party of 3 people or whatever is not going to be able to handle that labyrinth. So it's just these parties kind of coming together to tackle a labyrinth, which is going to be very difficult. This venture was wildly successful, catapulting their new clan to fame. They continued to work seamlessly together, growing their numbers, until they could clear multiple labyrinths at once. Pretty huge. Reese had been through a labyrinth or 2 himself. He can say from experience that if you wanted to tackle a particularly difficult one, you'd need a highly experienced S-rank party full of warriors with trained good judgment, best equipment, and backup waiting in the wings. Yeah, I can tell, and I'm kind of actually surprised that Rudy's didn't get into this with greater detail. Could you imagine how differently the teleportation labyrinth would have gone if they actually had like a clan behind them? Yes, they had like, Lilia and everybody else kind of backing them up from the outside so that if there's anything that went wrong, they could be there to support them. Once they get out there, they can tend the wounded and get them back to the, back to the inn or whatever. You have people back at the town itself that are getting equipment ready. Like they were talking about making scrolls and whatnot, getting all their equipment prepared so that when they get back, they can rest and immediately go back. They don't have to come back and then get all the equipment they need and then go back. Everything's being done for them. You basically have a bunch of people waiting on them hand and foot whenever they come out of that dungeon so they can rest the entire time. So they did have part of this equation set up, but as they get into here in a minute, I mean, this would have gone so much better if they could just have one group that was just kind of drilling in while somebody checked the floors. Because that's the important thing there. What Rudius and them were doing is as they went down, they were having to basically map out the entire level. One, they were experimenting. Two, they were confirming the book. But yes, they were also looking for Zenith. They weren't sure if she was at the very depths of it. But they were wasting a lot of time on the upper floors that were very easy for them. If they could have somebody that were, even if they were lower rank parties that were with them as a clan, if Rudius and them were drilling down with their S-rank party going down there, they could have lower level people that were up in the upper levels finishing that off. Thus, they could have gotten their objective a lot quicker. Because yes, they would have ended up at the very bottom floor, at the boss room, very quick without worry they're leaving Zenith behind. Again, it's kind of odd that they didn't actually get into great detail here. Again, they did a good job. I think the way that Geese had them plan out that whole trip into the teleportation labyrinth was very crafty. He was very smart. He had them very prepared. And yes, they were looking into a lot of a lot of it was from the book, obviously, again, but it was using a lot of Geese's knowledge and navigating and yes, avoiding traps that helped them get down there as fast as possible. But it could have been interesting to kind of deep dive into what a clan would have provided for them. How much better it would have been if they had a clan behind them. That all said, it wasn't always possible to be perfectly prepared. There wasn't enough hours in the day for each adventurer to carry on with their lives, while also maintaining equipment, planning, and doing preparations. A party could only reasonably expect to go in the labyrinth once every couple months. That's very interesting. Yes, geek them here. Playing a lot of MMOs in my days, this is totally true. Like, this is my experience, basically, and I'm pretty sure a lot of this is probably something that's inspired Refugian in his writing. And a lot of my time playing different MMOs like Ultima Online, Shadowbane, EverQuest, World of Warcraft, the list goes on. Especially World of Warcraft, this is definitely a thing where you have like a lot of raids and whatnot, and the time in between doing the raids, you literally have to spend so much time gathering resources. And yes, a lot of the guilds that I had people that never raided. All they did is just aid the guild. Like that, they loved doing that. They loved just making the potions. And so yeah, every time we go to raid, you had this person walking up and they were throwing all the equipment to everybody, all the potions to everybody, and we're like this is like the queen of our group is this one person that just shows up before the raid and just gives everybody everything they need for the raid. And that's all they did. They just spent the entire week, and it took a lot. Like they were literally playing most of the week just to get all the resources that we used in that like 1 or 2 hours. That's how bad it was for some of these materials for them to get. And they were like treasured. And it's like one of those aspects that a lot of people don't really kind of credit here. Like again, with them going to the teleportation labyrinth, everything that Lilia, Viera, and Shara were doing that entire time, whenever they were doing the labyrinth or when they came back from the labyrinths, these were things that were absolutely necessary for them to have been successful in that teleportation labyrinth. You cannot downplay what the individuals outside of the actual adventure party is doing. There were those who managed to conquer labyrinths with little equipment, planning, and preparation. If they were fortunate, they could find some magic items that fetched a good price. More frequently, however, failure meant death. And I think that's what a lot of them do this for. It's just like the glory of getting that one item that just sets them for life. It's the adrenaline of death, too. So the question is, what could a group do to stay in optimal condition? So they could explore these difficult labyrinths and guarantee that they make it to the depths. That's right. Form a large clan. Many hands lighten the load. They could have one party specializing in battle, diving deep into the labyrinth. Again, that would have been Paul's party. One party using that info brought back to conduct more thorough search of the levels. Again, having a separate party that did those levels as they went along. And finally, support parties in charge of planning, organizing, and managing. That's Lily and all them. Of course, they weren't doing the managing. That was, again, also spared off to Paul for the final decision, Geese for the decision making. Breaking it down into smaller tasks, they were more efficient at clearing out labyrinths. This is why S-rank adventurers formed and joined enormous clans, and I can see the massive benefit to this. Again, just a random group of like 5 people having to deal with all that would be very difficult. You can't just jump into a labyrinth and then, yeah, they could probably initially jump into labyrinth, but they're not going to be efficient. They're probably going to, clear out the first floor, get tired, go back. It's going to take too much time to recuperate and get all the equipment they need before going back in. Again, this is talking about like very difficult labyrinths. This isn't talking about your Joe Schmo labyrinth that's very easy and they can easily clear on their own. We're talking about very difficult labyrinths, very difficult ones that require a lot of planning. And again, they're dealing with a lot of traps and stuff like that. Again, similar to the teleportation labyrinth. Now, they did have their downsides. The larger the clan, the higher expenses grew. They could be defrayed by the profit of cleaning out a labyrinth. Assuming they were always successful, the money earned from selling a single magic crystal from the deepest parts could sometimes net you enough to afford a lavish mansion in an austere kingdom. If they're really fortunate, they might even find some magic items along the way. A good haul could feed hundreds for an entire year. This kind of makes me wonder how many labyrinths are in the world, because they're almost making it out like it's almost like a business. And they're like just going through and just kind of churning through these labyrinths. Like, okay, here's the next one. Let's just churn through that. I mean, that was like the case with Soldat when Rudius was, first ending the 7th volume. Was like, hey, man, there's a new labyrinth open, so we're heading on over there and we're going to wipe it out really quickly. It almost acts like these are just kind of, okay, new one's up, take it out. Like, how many are there and how many are being created, I guess is the better question. That wasn't always the case, though. They couldn't always clear out the entire labyrinth every time. Yeah, I can totally see them. There's a possibility that you might get in there and then find something that's just unbeatable. Like, I mean, take for instance the situation with the teleportation labyrinth again, with the idea of the Hydra. That's technically a situation where I could probably see a lot of people not being able to figure it out, or just wasting too much time trying to figure it out, and then eventually gets to a point where they're like, we can't waste any more time on this thing. Nothing we're throwing at it's working, and we're wasting too many resources to get down there and try it again and again. And we've lost a lot of people already. This isn't worth the effort. This isn't worth the time. They want the glory, and they're going to probably keep pushing for the glory. And and like we note, there's a lot of stuff down there. There was a lot of money. But at what point would you cut and run? Well, at what point would you just kind of cut your losses? Other clans might beat them to it, or their S-rank Vanguard team might get wiped out. That's a huge thing, like having a major party group fall through. They also could run out of funding midway. There were a number of reasons, really, but all of them resulted in a clan going in the red. A clan's whole purpose was to earn money, yet they could wind up with financial problems themselves. But that was life. Nothing ever goes according to plan. To solve the cash flow problem, the most reliable method was to have each party under their command take on requests and extract a certain percentage of the earnings for the clan's coffers. Alternatively, they could take on requests that required numerous parties to complete, slaying straggler worms, for instance. There was one final option for these clans: exclusive requests from national governments, or big-time merchants. The trading boats that ventured between the Demon Continent and the Mills Continent was a great example. A large-scale clan had taken all the bodyguard positions in the Westport and Eastport. Yep, remember that one. When they mentioned that, I was like immediately like, oh yeah, remember that one. The clan would rotate members between bodyguard work and labyrinth missions. Looking into specifically Thunderbolt and their financial situation, they were one of the top clans in the Northern Territories, with contracts tying them to large enterprise in each of the 3 nations and the Magician's Guild. They had a lot of connections, but that came with a lot of obligations to folks who didn't get along, a lot of relationships to manage, and that was its own challenge. To tackle that, whenever they retrieved a magic item from the labyrinth, they needed to decide whether to sell it to the Magician's Guild or one of their merchant contacts. It's like, there's so much politics in it. I love it, dude. There's like so much thought process put in this whole thing, and it all kind of makes sense. The idea of like how they're managing all this stuff, and yeah, trying not to show favoritism between the two sides. And again, this is something that Rudius has talked about several times here recently with Quagmire Mercenary Band, is the idea that these people in this area don't get along. A lot of people don't get along. And so they do kind of like this idea of working with their band because they have no allegiance to somebody. They have a lot of disputes and whatnot. They need help or whatever. They need bodyguards. And so Rudius's group here is kind of a good option for them. So yeah, it kind of ties in with this mindset that, yeah, they kind of have to be very careful about who they're working with and who they make contacts with. To avoid unnecessary friction, they limited how many wealthy patrons they contracted with and which territories they conducted labyrinth exploration in. Even so, their members continued to grow until they had over 50 parties and 500 members. And again, I'm questioning, like, how many freaking labyrinths are in this world? Now, granted, a lot of those party members are probably not doing, there could be a chunk of those party members that are not doing labyrinths. But that's a lot, seemingly a lot of their purpose is to do that, so I'm not sure. The leader needed to try to balance avoiding bankruptcy while ensuring its members are provided for. A cold outside assessment might suggest disbanding or scaling back. However, it took courage to relinquish an army that size once you assume control of it. The leader anguished and then was forced to make a call. Only one job allowed them to feed 500 members and keep open to future labyrinth exploration. Mercenary business. It wasn't an outlandish choice. Killing people was out of most adventurers' wheelhouse, but adventuring had taught many of them the needed experience to be deadly in a fight. Again, that's kind of getting into what they were talking about in the previous chapters. There's a struggle here about, yes, they technically do fight a lot. And yes, a lot of adventurers probably have to deal with people that are murderers. A lot of people that will stab you in the back. Say a labyrinth dungeon diver. Like, you're going down a labyrinth and suddenly you find a really expensive item. What are the chances that somebody you just met yesterday would be willing to just stab you right in the back and take the item and go, yep, monster's got him. Damn, that sucks, right? There's a lot of these people probably have to deal with, and yeah, especially bandits. And he does get that into that a little bit here, that there's kind of a difference that you kind of run into with the idea of fighting a bandit versus fighting just a person from another kingdom that's trying to fight for the land, or being forced into fighting for the noblemen for their land. There's a difference here. There's a massive difference here between defending yourself and fighting in a war and murdering somebody. There's like these three differences there that are very, very distinct in how they make you feel. But yeah, which adventurers would be okay with the idea of being, conscribed into going into a war? That's what Sarah and them were dealing with. We're going to end up being signed into this. This led Thunderbolt to fuse into a cross between Adventure Clan and a mercenary band, without specializing in one or the other. There were those that withdrew membership, unwilling to leave the northern territories they called home and venture into the conflict zone. The party at the core of Thunderbolt, however, followed their leader every step of the way. Soldat's step leader was no exception. From the way he explained it, their days consisted of labyrinth exploration and battle. After following Soldat back to the clan's room, he filled Ruius in on all the details. They were welcomed in as if they were members themselves. Soldat spoke as dispassionately as ever, as if work were a distant memory. His voice somehow, simultaneously, bored and curt.
It ain't really all that. There's never any need for mercenaries here. And we've got all the funding we need. In all these past couple of years, we've cleared out 5 whole labyrinths. Okay, it's not as much not as much as I thought they were clearing. But I mean, that sort of matches up. I mean, I would probably argue maybe 4 to 6 months just to clear one labyrinth, I guess. But there's really some guys here who really can't hack it. Cutting down bandits that attack you on the highways and killing people for a living are 2 different things, see? A lot of them plan to scrounge up money they can through their labyrinths exploration and then retire and hightail it back home. None of the step leaders that Reese remembered from last time remained. They either retired or died. Considering all that they had done for him, he felt a prickle of grief. Yeah, it kind of seemed to indicate that they all kind of brought him in. I mean, it was a large part of it was Soldat himself, but a lot of them were kind of welcoming him in. I mean, a lot of them were telling Soldat to chill out when Soldat was, getting into it with him. Man, don't be mean to that boy. He's crying. Don't pick on Quagmire. What about you, Mr. Soldat? You're not going to retire? Huh? Soldat's mouth dropped halfway open. Then he snorted in laughter. I've thought about it, but the opportunity already passed me by. I'll either die doing what I'm doing, or lose an arm, find myself unable to do work any longer, and keel over in a ditch somewhere. That's all fate's got in store for me.
He sounded dismissive, as if he didn't care what happened to him. But he said these same sort of things back when Reese palled around with him. Really? The truth is, you feel obligated to look after the newbies. Am I wrong?
Oh, look at you, hitting a bullseye like that. When you were just a brat, you'd never notice that kind of thing. But I guess you've gotten hitched, huh? Got a bit more confidence since you solved your downstairs problem. And you made yourself a kid or two, huh? That it?
Soldat wrapped his arm around Rudius's neck and grounded his fist into his scalp. Ow, ow! It sure took Rudius back. I miss Soldat. Soldat the bro. Gosh dang. We haven't seen him since 7, right? No, we did. We got to see him again at some point. That's right. It was when, it was right after Ellen Lace and Cliff got together because, they wanted to take Cliff out, all that kind of stuff. I forgot about that.
So what brings you in this neck of woods? This ain't no place for a merry man.
Yeah, well, it'll be a long story if you want the full details, but he gave him a quick rundown of the events that led him here. He probably told him everything with Sarah. And then, yes, I became a princess of the Demon Continent. I became a princess on the Demon Continent. Don't forget that part. And so here I am, hoping to bring North God Kalman III into the fold.
all part of a greater plan. Huh, so you're this dragon god Orsted's underling now? Well, you were really cut above the rest. Guess that ain't too surprising. Soldat looked a little surprised at the development, but also didn't doubt Rudius. He's like, man, I don't know. He was pretty rough back in the day, that Rudius guy. I guess he finally snapped. That poor boy finally snapped. I mean, he had a blade to his neck when I was just about to leave the poor guy, and then I had to pick him back up and take him with me, but yep, he snapped. Boy snapped. If it's North God Kalman you're after, there definitely was a guy that fit the bill around here a couple of years ago. Oh, really? And where has he gone? Your guess is good as mine. I don't know more than that. I met with him a number of times. Strange guy. He was up there in age, but he sure had a lot of energy. He was trying to teach younger members swordsmanship. Yeah? He was very precise about it. You could tell it was the North God style he was using. But even without a sword in his hand, he was ridiculously strong. I figured he was some kind of big deal. Makes sense if he was a North God. Reese corrected and thought. The North God Kalman III was supposed to have an unquenchable thirst for recognition. He was also supposed to be in the possession of an incredible greatsword, which he received from his father. If he was hiding his name, sealing his sword away, and spending time teaching martial arts, then that had to be Kalman II, not the third, right? On reflection, it might not be so crazy after all. Yeah, that's my thought, because he specifically says that he was up there in age, and I'm presuming that the third has to be much younger. Yes, they age slower, like they live longer. We don't know if they possibly like mature body-wise to a certain point, and then it kind of stunts there as they get older and older. Kind of similar like we're talking about with the Magurdians. Like they like mature their body-wise, like I think they said in their hundreds or something like that. But I would assume, again, going back to Geese's chapter, he probably talked to the Kalman III. He was much younger. He looked like he still had like baby fat on his cheek or whatever. And right here, Soldat's going out of his way to talk about how he was up there in age. That makes me believe that cannot be the one that Geese talked to. So that's probably the second. I gotta remember if he was carrying a great sword. Yeah, I think he was carrying a great sword in the Geese chapter. That would be another sign there of the third. On reflection, it might not be that crazy after all. Reese knew his presence in the world had a ripple effect, changing what various other people was supposed to be doing during this loop. It wasn't strange to think that the North God Kalman II would wind up here, where his son was originally supposed to be. According to Orsted, his father and son had similar fates. I see. Yeah, and that would explain it if his son is trying to be his father. If they have similar fates, it's probably because his son is trying to do what his father did. He's seeking out... Again, he was trying to defeat a behemoth. I see. Thank you for the information. They struck out again. Same bad luck as a meeting with a sword god. This was becoming a trend. Sure, one might argue things had gone a little bit too smoothly up until now, but Rudius couldn't help but feel a little panicky after failing 2 objectives in a row. He doubted Geese's preparations were encountering this kind of difficulty. Yeah, sadly, because he has the man god kind of saying this is what's going to happen. Well, since it looks like we're out of luck, I'll be heading home. Soldat shook his head. Instant round trip, eh? How about you stick around and take it easy? We welcome you here. Unfortunately, I'm a busy man. Makes sense. What with you being the Dragon God's underling? Awfully distinguished now, ain't you? I'll be counting on you to hook me up once I retire from adventuring. Oh, in that case, I actually have a whole organization in my command. Ruquag's Mercenary Band. We're more geared towards fulfilling miscellaneous errands for people than actual mercenary work. You'd be more than welcome to join us. In fact, you should come back with us now. No need to wait until retirement. Ruse figured it wouldn't be best to invite Soldat without consulting Aisha first. Because I'm sure that she'll be totally mad if you do that. They could surely work something out. Even if Aisha were to nix it, Ruse could employ him somewhere else. He could join the Orsted Corporation. Their company had its eyes on the future, and they'd welcome new blood into their ranks. Soldat was tough and had a habit of looking out for others. They could do with more people like him. Damn straight, dude. I think that would be like an aspect of why Aisha would probably like him in the group. Like, technically him, oh my gosh. Him as a partner of Aisha. I mean, there's the option there too, is the idea of like, Aisha and Soldat as a pairing. That might actually work. That might actually work. I never thought about that. Soldat's kind of a broski. I could totally see him and Aisha kind of hitting it off. Damn, that's actually really good. I'm sorry, Sarah. Never mind, Sarah. That ain't happening. I kind of had a thing there because of how much they were kind of bickering at each other all the time. She hated his guts. I thought it'd be funny if they get together. But man, Soldat and Aisha. I mean, there is obviously an age difference there. It's not a massive age difference, but like, I guess it is kind of a massive age difference. I mean, for some people, it's a very massive age difference there, but I don't know. That actually sounds like a pairing right there. I think their personalities would kind of work really well.
I mean, she's probably going to hate his guts at first because he seems like somebody that just kind of slacks off, but he's very dependable when it counts. I don't know. I'd have to think on that one, actually, because I think that she would probably hate his guts. Like, for different reasons that Sarah did. Sarah didn't like his attitude. Sarah did not like his attitude. But Aisha would probably not like... I mean, it all depends on what kind of person Soldat is outside of being an adventurer. Like, he goes into labyrinths and comes back, and he wants to chill with his comrades. Even though, yes, whenever somebody's in trouble, he's going to go above and beyond to help them out. And that's what happened with Rudius. So it does kind of show, at least whenever he's outside of adventuring and outside of his job, he's a hard worker even still. He's somebody that will see things to the end. But I guess I'm sort of blaming him for his kind of having fun with his members outside of stuff as a sign of him being a slacker outside of his job. And I can see that being something that she would hate. But it does show that when he is doing his job, he is very skilled. This isn't somebody that messes up. And to be able to do labyrinths, you have to be on your freaking toes. So I can see Aisha liking that he's not somebody to mess up. Now, he could mess up in labyrinths, we just didn't know about it. But in order to live through labyrinths as much time as he has been doing, does show me that he's sort of somebody that doesn't slip up, somebody that isn't going to screw up. He did technically screw up, and that's why Rudius first met him, but that was the guild's mess up. Let's be clear, that was the guild's mess up. That wasn't Soldat Step Leader's mess up. That was the guild's mess up. God, I'm sorry. I'm going to move on. I can see both sides. I can see her hating him, but I can also see them being kind of a good pairing. But I don't know. I mean, I would have to. There was probably a little bit of it at the very end of Volume 7, but I don't know what Soldat's taste was. I don't know that he would like an Aisha. Maybe. I mean, he liked Annalise. I mean, she had curves elsewhere, and Aisha has curves in another place, but still he liked Annalise. I don't know if we could draw conclusions from that. Anyways, moving on. I know I was the one that brought it up, but I'll have to turn you down. I may not seem like a most respectable fella, but I got men that look up to me. Reese expected him to say something like that. This is the same guy that stood in a firing line to defend one of his comrades earlier, even though the fearsome mercenary knights themselves were the ones bearing the rifles. He had somewhere he belonged already. Something he thought was worth protecting. I'll be dependent on you to make good on your word if I ever get driven out of here. When that happens, I'll probably be down an arm, so I might be totally useless to you. Rias smiled. Hey, so what if you are? I don't mind. I'll be waiting for you. He's gonna take care of his bro. Soldat gave a snort of laughter, as if he didn't truly believe Rudius meant it. Still, Rudius could sense that his words meant something to him. This dynamic brought back memories, and with them, joy. Well, anyhow, you sure have surprised me, being all grown up, since you were just some clueless brat before. I remember how you drowned yourself in so much liquor back then. I thought you'd kill yourself. You're faced with a mess of tears and snot when I took you to that brothel, too. Ugh, Rudius wished she didn't bring that up. What's this all about? Eris demanded. No, run. So, good seeing you again, Soldat. Take care. All right, let's go, Eris. Oh, story time, is it? Mr. Soldat, maybe we should drop this in. Sure, why not? Ain't like you bothered about what happened all those years ago, right? That whole saga is a big hit to the guys back in the Mercenary band. Oof, Soldat, bro, come on. It's a guy thing, I guess. It's a guy thing. But still, like, dude, you really have to be telling everybody this story? His failures were a big hit? Edis's brow furrowed, and her frown deepened. What saga? About this fella here. Don't know what they call him now, but back when he was a venturer, he introduced himself as Quagmire Rudius. He'd smile at everyone, acting all formal and being super polite. All that spite of being a first-rate adventurer. No exaggeration either. He took down a red worm straggler all by himself. Reese didn't introduce himself that way, nor defeat a straggler all on his own. But these kind of stories do benefit from a little embellishment. Yeah, I don't recall him ever saying, like, I am Quagmire Rudius. But yeah, everybody knew him as Quagmire Rudius because all he used was Quagmire. But even still now, yes, he doesn't believe that he defeated that straggler all by himself. You did, dude. You kind of did. Back when he was debating what to call himself, when our Quagmire here was still nothing more than a little puddle. Forget being a charmer. He wouldn't even hardly talk to no one. Wasn't any smiling either. Almost like he lost the ability to form one while he was still in his mama's womb. Nah. What he wore was a ridiculous empty grin on his face. Almost like some cheap mask he found on the markets and slapped it on.
Crazy thing was that you could still see in his eyes. He was looking down on everyone around him, almost like he thought he was the most miserable guy in the whole world, and none of us would ever understand. Depressing little brat he was. I didn't like him. Soldat paused there, as if he suddenly remembered the hostility he had shown Rudius back then. He glanced at Rudius briefly, gave a short snort of laughter, and then turned back to Eris. Anyhow, that's kind of the kid he was. Then one day, he showed up at the bar me and the rest of Step Leader frequented. He started knocking back drinks almost like he was a full-fledged adult. Really got on my skin. Can't really explain exactly what irritated me so much, but I didn't like him. So I sided up with him. Figured I'd tease him a little bit. The kid didn't have the guts to take me on. Rhea shot a worried glance at Eris. She was listening silently, but there was a dangerous gleam in her eyes. It wasn't like Rudius expected her to cut him down, but he wouldn't put it past her to take a swing at Soldat. Out of nowhere, the kid socked me in the face. He was drunk, sure. But on top of that, we're talking about a mage clocking a swordsman. I didn't strike him back, though, because Quagmire here was bawling like a baby. How could a respected, upstanding fellow like me raise my hand against a brat who was crying and taking a wild swing? Ain't no way. Right, Eris said, her voice like a growl. Reese wished Soldat would leave well alone and stop there. Eris was already angry. On the other hand, this story wasn't entirely meant to mock him. By the end, Soldat was looking Reese in the eye, which is why he was hopeful that he would follow up his tale with a little clarification to pacify her, assuming she didn't clobber Soldat midway through. When I asked him what it was all about, he told me about this girl that he got all chummy with. Right as the two of them were about to do the deed together, he found he couldn't get it up. Girl before this one had abandoned him and left him traumatized. Pretty rich, ain't it? Here's this guy who'd taken down the straggler all by his own, and he couldn't perform in the bed. Still, I'm a big softy. I wanted to do something for Quagmire to help him recover. Oh, but just so we're clear, I ain't saying I touched him, okay? I didn't swing that way, by the way. I don't go for dudes. Hey, it's a joke. You're supposed to laugh that part. Don't worry, you're not my type either. Rudy is forced to laugh to respond to him on Eris's behalf. Meanwhile, the atmosphere around Eris had grown tense and oppressive. He could imagine static crackling in the air. Moving on then. So I decided to get him fixed up. The two of us took off to a brothel. See, I figured this kind of stuff is best left to the pros. I tossed him to a high-quality brothel and retreated to a pub, waiting for the good news. I have no idea what got up in the brothel, or rather, if he got up. Whatever happened didn't work. He was a broken man who'd never be able to stand again. Or at least parts of him wouldn't. Another punchline. But Eris wasn't laughing. Just a murderous glare. If even a pro couldn't fix him, I knew there was nothing I could do. We spent that night knocking back ale. But we haven't even gotten to the best part yet. Just wait. See, as we were heading back, he was groping one of the ladies from the brothel, saying, "A lady with so much bounce in her breasts is way better than some flat-chested chick." Just happened, though, that girl from his party was right nearby. Yep, the very one he tried and failed to get intimate with. Smack! Never show me your face again. It was actually pretty entertaining watching Soldat recount this. Reese could tell that he had plenty of practice. This is so bad that he's been selling this so many times. There you have it. Having been completely rejected, Quagmire resolved himself to a single life as an adventurer. After finishing, chuckles echoed through the room from the other members who listened. Reese almost laughed himself, carried along by their momentum. It was rather more nostalgic than entertaining, though. So much had happened after all that. Only a few years had passed, and so much had changed. It really brings back memories. Sure does. I was still young myself back then. I had no reason for butting my nose into your business, but I did. Seems to me like you're not much different now, unless I'm mistaken. Haha, you've got some nerdy old twerp. He slung his arm around Reese's neck again, grinding his fist in his scalp. It didn't take long for him to come back to his senses and glance to Eris. Come to think of it, I guess this isn't really a tell for this red-headed beauty you got with you. Who exactly is she? Pretty sure you had a thing against redheads in the past. I don't have anything against them, or hate them, or whatever. I just had a tiny bit of trauma, that's all. That's just a fancy term for hating something. Considering this, Reese glanced at Eris, who was in her signature stance. Reese could tell that she was unnerved. She must have known that Reese didn't have anything against redheads. No, he couldn't assume that. He should say it outright. I don't hate red hair. I know that. Just so you know, and like of everything right now, let's not have that be the misunderstanding right now. I like red hair. I mean, I'm surprised that he said that because technically the girl that he got in the brothel was exactly like Eris, pretty much. Oh, showing off in front of me, eh? So, this beauty's your woman? Yes, her name's Eris. Eris, I'm pretty sure you can tell from his story. This is Mr. Soldat, who took me in after I was in a rough way. She kept her arms crossed as she glowered at him. Eris, she said, in a way of greeting. Oh, yeah, and I'm Soldat. As you know, hold up a sec, Eris, ain't that the name of the woman who put you in this whole situation? Oh, let me explain.
Just as he did for Sarah long ago, Reyes gave him the bite-sized version of things that had happened. It was much easier to talk to Soldat about all this than Sarah, to be honest. Because that's kind of like the whole situation with how they perceive the trauma itself. A male, with the whole situation of the trauma, they're going to understand it more. The idea of what would cause that trauma and what that trauma means to a male is much more significantly different than what a female would understand it. A female is not going to be able to understand how dehumanizing that aspect is, the lack there of that performance, and how it makes you not feel like a man. He's going to be able to understand all this. Yeah, if that happened to me, maybe that would be what would happen to my body too. And yeah, I could see not having that working. That would F me up. I can't imagine that not working. Well, long as you're okay with it, I guess. Strangely, and this is the same here. Strangely, Soldat's reaction to all this was far less accepting than Sarah's had been. He pulled a face, glowering right back at Eris. This is twofold. Soldat, again, as a male, is going to understand how traumatizing that not working anymore would be, and how that would F you up. But additionally, Soldat was there the entire time. All the way up into the part where he parted ways with him and Reyes went off to the university, he lived beside Rudius and tried to keep him on his feet. He was there when Rudius tried to cut his throat. He knows how much this destroyed Rudius. Sarah wasn't there. Sarah showed up, smacked him, and then left. Soldat seen it firsthand from the very beginning, the moment that Rudius nearly ended his own life, got up on his feet again, but still looked like he was a husk of what he was. This is a guy that was destroyed. And so yeah, he's not going to accept it as quick as Sarah, because Sarah didn't see it. Sarah just heard what happened, and then heard that it got resolved. Soldat watched it. And you know that Soldat tried everything he could to fix him because he was there that entire night, despite the fact the next day they had to leave for a labyrinth. He was there the whole night with Rudius. That was the thing that I was giving so much credit to Soldat for. He didn't take Rudius to the brothel and say, they'll take care of you. They're pros. Yeah, he's good. He's good. Let's go back to the inn. Let's go get some fun. No, he waited. He could have went off with a woman into the brothel and banged it up. No, he went to the bar next door. Like it's a connection. The bar's like right connected to the brothel. And he was there. He's like literally at the exit of the brothel, waiting for his boy to come out. He just got in a fight with Rudius. He never liked him. He got in a fight with him. Oh, you're broken? Let's take you to a brothel. Wait for him. That whole night. I gotta leave tomorrow morning. I'm gonna wait for him. I'm gonna wait for this boy. He's down bad. I gotta take care of this boy. Again, he seen it happen. He's seen the effects. Sarah didn't. It affects Sarah because she's in love with Rudius, but it affects Soldat because he's a bro. Bros stick with bros. Very cool that they're kind of pointing this out. Very cool stuff right here. He pulled a face, glowering back at Eris. Quagmire here was in a really bad way back then, you know? We're talking an inch from suicide bad. Knowing all that, you still have the audacity to get with him again, huh? That picture, dude. That picture, dude. Oh, there's so much broski and so much tension in that picture. It's not even funny. And it's sad because Eris right here knows she's wrong, but she's still pissed. What the hell are you talking about? This is my guy. I know Rudius. He's mine. Why are you saying that I'm a thing that hurt him? And that's what ultimately, I think that's why she leaves. And obviously it kind of implies that. That's why she leaves. She knows she's wrong. She knows she screwed up. She knows that she screwed up. Eris's hair almost seemed to stand on end, as if crackling with anger at Soldat. Rhys shot out of his seat and tried to make his way over to force her back. He even opened his mouth, hoping to pacify her with soothing words. Tell her that Soldat didn't mean any harm by it. Before he could, Eris whipped around and dashed out the room. It sucks because it's so long ago and Rhys is over it, but yet this becomes a new trauma for Eris. I hurt him so bad. She knows this happened, but she doesn't know to what extent. Well, looks like I'd said too much, huh? Soldat slapped his hand over his forehead, pushing his hair back. You didn't tell her any of that? Huh? I mean, you didn't tell her how bad off you were back then? I thought I had. Not to this detail. Not to this detail. And he never mentioned the fact that he tried. Unless it was said sometime off of script that we read, he never told her that he nearly ended his life. How traumatizing can that be? For you to say the wrong thing, or say something that gets misinterpreted or that hurts somebody really badly, and you didn't intend for it to. Somebody that you love dearly, only to find out later. They probably wouldn't tell you. I doubt anybody would want to tell them directly, but somebody tells them another time later on. Yeah, they nearly took their own life. Ow. Ow. Like nix all of this. Going to the brothel. Haha, he couldn't get it up. Haha, he was so down bad. Haha, he swore to a single life. He was an inch from suicide bad. My heart would drop. I am so sorry that I pushed you there. I don't care if I intended it or not. I am so sorry whatever I said got you there. That hurts. That's probably why she turned and walked out. Ugh, damn. Reese said that, but wasn't feeling too confident now. Again, I think it's the near death thing. Because he covered most all this stuff in the letter. That he was down bad and everything. And again, it was all clarified because he talked to his future self. But it didn't repair it. He even said that himself. Knowing what the future self told me, it still doesn't fix it. Even when Reserve was like, dude, I think you're hearing that wrong. It still doesn't change that I was broken. Thinking it over, they hadn't had a chance to talk to anyone who'd known him back at that time. Soldat was the only one who knew how bad it had gotten. Yep. Again, not Sarah. Soldat. Not Sylphie. Soldat. Not anybody else. Not Zenoba. Soldat. Because by the time that Ruius got to the university, he was pretty much accepting it. Like, he still had struggles, yeah. He still had the trauma, but he knew how to, he got to a point where he could mask it. That's the key thing there. When he was a Soldat, he was at his worst. He just tried to perform again, and he destroyed a relationship, a possible new relationship. I keep breaking everything that I touch. That's why he was literally terrified the moment he was sitting there beside Sarah, not just the night before. He was terrified, and his body was tensing up and seizing up because he thought about that time he destroyed everything again. Somebody was asking me how he could still be traumatized when he's gotten over his trauma with Eris. Because Sarah is a new trauma. Yes, back here when he was at the refugee camp and Eris wasn't there the next morning, his thought process that I destroyed a family I could have had. It's my fault. I messed something up. I broke this. She's leaving because I broke it. Then he goes up north and he's like, okay, let's try this again. Let's try this with Sarah. Goes in that room and he can't perform and she is mad. In his eyes, in his mind, she's disgusted by him and walks out that door. I broke something again. Goes to the brothel. It's not working. Haha, he's having fun. Whatever. Anyways, gets in front of Sarah and she smacks him. I destroyed this relationship. I destroyed this. I keep destroying things. It's nothing to do with Eris anymore. Right there. This trauma has nothing to do with Eris anymore. It's the cause. It's the root cause, but this is a new trauma. And so when he's sitting next to Sarah the night before, he's thinking of that moment. When he nearly ended his own life. That moment. Traumas can feed into each other, but it doesn't make one clear away the other. That's why I was talking about the idea that he can never be intimate with Sarah until he gets over that root cause of the trauma with Sarah. Not Eris, Sarah. So that was the only one who knew how bad it gotten. Sylphie had surely filled Eris in on the gist of it. Reese told her a bit himself as well. But this was her first time hearing the full story. For Eris, this likely served as a reminder of what an awful mistake she had made. It didn't really bother Reese anymore. He thought of it as a short patch of misery that had been washed away by current happiness. He was free as a bird nowadays, doing whatever he liked. Well, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go comfort her. Right, see you then, Quagmire. And don't you forget that bit about offering me work if I lose an arm. I won't. Just don't lose your life along with it. The hell I ever would. Don't you know who you're talking to? Reese hoped that he keep the same rapport with him when they meet again. As Reese reached for the door handle to leave, Soldat called out. Hey, that's right. I don't know where this Kalman fella went off to, but
there's a place I went to a couple of years ago on a mercenary work you ought to know about. The info he passed on had nothing to do with Ruius' search for Geese or designs against the man god, but it was extremely pertinent to him and Eris. Another, like, almost a little bit too convenient moment. Is a little bit too convenient. But I mean, this is the work that Soldat's doing right now. He's going all over these lands. Meeting old friends Soldat and Sarah had been pure coincidence. It had been 10 whole years since Eris left him behind in the Fatoa region. There was no way of knowing where life would take Ruius back then. He'd been too self-involved to even contemplate it. Even if he had, he could never have predicted returning here with Eris in search for the North God. He had a home, wives, and children to go back to. He wouldn't have foreseen that in his wildest dreams. Life wasn't perfect. He had an enemy in the man god. Geese was the enemy, and Eris was distraught. When Ruius found her, she was on the edge of the town on a gentle slope. Having thrown herself onto the ground, her eyes fixed to the sky above, Ruius wondered what was going through her mind and remembered that time in Roa. She would often plop herself down on a stack of hay behind the stables to stare at the sky like this whenever things didn't go her way. He slunk down beside her and took a seat. As soon as he did, she reached over and grabbed his hand. I did some awful things to you. I wouldn't go that far. I never knew you tried to kill yourself before. Well, I was just really hammered and not in my right mind. Her eyes darted over to him. Does Sophie know? I doubt it. I mean, that's just, again, I think in that regard, it's just not something you want to share. I mean, how often do you have thoughts like that and you're like, hey, guys, so you know I did this? I mean, that's the problem that comes with that whole situation is nobody wants to say anything. They don't want people to know that. That's going to make people worry about you. It's going to make people think you're crazy. It's going to make people do other things, stop you in a way that you're uncomfortable with. It's just, it sucks. His actions were spur of the moment, and Soldat immediately put a stop to it. Ruius never thought about it again afterwards. He didn't really think it was worth bringing up. The more important question right now was how to comfort Eris. He didn't get the feeling that she would be satisfied if he simply said it didn't bother him anymore. What? Nothing, I guess. I was just thinking that I would never have met Soldat or Sarah if things hadn't gone down the way they did between us when we were in the Fatoa region. Yeah, well, sorry. It's not like I'm fishing for an apology. Sarah and Mr. Soldat were fine people, weren't they? What I'm trying to say is that since I met people like them, it really wasn't all that bad. Eris squeezed his hand tightly. She had changed so much. She wouldn't have been so transparent in the past, letting him see her weakness like this. Granted, he was the main reason she felt vulnerable at this moment. As you know, Eris, I'm doing great now. We've had a kid. What's in the past is the past. I guess. As he massaged her hand, she yanked him towards her. Next thing he knew, she had pulled herself in and grabbed him by the shoulder, putting her lips firmly against his. I'll never disappear without saying something ever again. Right. Sylphie was mad at me too. True. Ruius thought, I'll stay at your side forevermore, my handsome prince. No, wait. This is no time to be love-strucken maiden. I'll be more careful in the future, too. Yeah, now then, how about we get going? We came up empty-handed this time, but next time, we'll find the North God Cowman for sure. This all part right here just hurts so much, but I do like the direction that Ruius takes it. He's like, I can't simply tell her, it's all in the past, I don't care anymore. Like, again, this goes to what I keep talking about, what Mushoku Tensei is to me, is the idea of a forward story. The idea of bad things happen in the past, you make massive mistakes, you make disgusting decisions, you're a horrible person or whatever, but it's always about the future. The future, the future, the future. So Reese is like the first person, as anybody, even though he doesn't fully acknowledge this idea, of, with Eris in this situation, acknowledging the forward, the future. Now, it does kind of counter, let's be honest, it does kind of counter his mindset when it came to going back to Eris. But I think that was just really a fear of, would he even like her anymore? Does he even want to be with her anymore? When it came to the future Rudius and it came to him writing the letter and everything like that, because he kept saying at that moment, I'm fixed, but I'm still kind of mad. I still don't know if I'm okay with this. She still really badly wronged me. It's like with Reserve, he's like, I think you took that wrong. Right at that moment when Reserve was telling him that he took her letter wrong, he was fine. He had a life. His thing got fixed. He was a Sylphie. He's married to her now. They have a house and everything together. But he's still very stuck on the idea that he wasn't happy with it. But that has obviously changed at this point, because in response to it, he's going, I don't really care anymore. I mean, we have a kid and we're happy and everything now. I'm good. But I know she won't take that. So the way that he pivots is something that's good. He acknowledges the good that came out of it. I think that is a really good way of sort of getting over a bad experience, is at least acknowledging that there was some sort of experience that came from it or some good that came out of it. Yes, this hurt me, and I was in a bad place during this time, but don't worry, I got something out of it. Eris, don't worry, I got something out of it. I appreciate what came of it. Because this happened, let's honestly play this out.
Because I mistook what you said back here, it put me in a bad spot, but I met everybody from Broken Arrow. I met Sarah. I met Soldat. I met Annalise. I went to the university. I found Sylphie again. If she didn't write that letter, let's be clear, there's a good chance he never would have met Sylphie again. He would have never ran into her again. He met Sylphie because he went off to the university during that time where he was down bad. Now, he could have been in the refugee camp, and at some point, old man God's like, hey, you should go to the university still. Just bring Eris with you. It's good. I don't know why I'm going with like a whole I'm slipping into Yoda mode. Yes, you will go to the university, you will. Yes. He could have still, bumped him in that direction if that was the intent that the man god had, is for him to go to the university. I'd be very curious if the man god cared for him to be with Eris or not. It does seem like there may be an intent to push him away from Sylphie to begin with, but he could have still told him to go up there. He could have still ended up at the university. He could still have run into her at some point. There could have been an aspect of destiny pushing him towards Sylphie to begin with. But yeah, Sylphie, Linnea, Priscilla, seeing Zenoba again, saving Julie. He would have never saved Julie's life. She would have probably died in that cage if Rudius hadn't, basically way back here, get pushed away by this letter. There's a lot that happened to him that he can contribute to a positive from the situation. And that's a good way, again, to get away from trauma, is to acknowledge at least something positive came out of it. Once you've kind of fixed yourself, you go, look, that was a bad time, but guess what? I grew. I got stronger. I'll know what to do next time. I ain't gonna fall again. If I fall, I know how to get that. I know that I can get out of it. I've done it before. I'll do it again. And yes, all this positive came out of it still. Positive still came out of it. And that's what can help Eris to acknowledge that it's okay, because I met Sarah, Soldat. They're good people. It's good stuff. I forgot about this. Rudius realized a number of men were watching them from afar. They appear to be mercenaries by their faces. Their stares directed entirely on Eris. It's kind of going back to when they first arrived here, so we're finally getting an explanation of why people are looking at Eris. Rudius didn't sense enmity, nor were they looking to challenge her. Maybe they're wanting training. Do you need something?
Oh, it's not like we were trying to pick a fight or nothing. There's a legend passed down about a divine spirit we Markians worship.
Yeah? Mind filling me in on which divinity you're referring to?
The goddess of the forest, Lane. A divine spirit of war with a body of a beast.
Lane? That sounded familiar to Rudius. The description of a beast-like body made Rudius wonder if it wasn't a beast folk religion. It didn't make a lot of sense why these Markians would have faith in a beast folk god. Lane did sound an awful lot like Ghislaine. Ghislaine was admittedly about as far from the word goddess as possible. Well, yeah, sure. You sure about that? There was a custom in this world for naming children after gods and esteemed figures. That could be where Ghislaine's name came from.
It is said that forest god Lane was in search of a girl with fire red hair. That if you inform her of the girl's location, she would bestow you a blessing of victory and good fortune.
That's what's up? That made sense as to why so many were stealing glances at us in the town.
That's the only reason we're looking, but sorry for staring.
Oh no, it's all right. The men promptly left after that. Little callback there. It's funny because even at that chapter, they're like, that's a story for another time. It's like, I guess this is the story. This is the extent of that story it was saying for another time. It'd be funny if Ghislaine came back there. I don't even know if anybody would actually know who she is. I don't think they would know who she is. I know that they had like an emblem or a trinket that was based on her, but yeah. Well, we may have come up empty-handed this time around, but there's somewhere where I'd like to go before we head back home. Do you mind? No, that's fine. Then that settles it. Let's get going. They made their way out of town. It took them a while to find the exact location they were looking for. All Reese had to go on was what Soldat described. The name of the country had changed, as did its borders. Reese planned to search for several days at most, but by pure good fortune, they came across it. Or perhaps Ghislaine had, at some point, described the area and it lingered in his memories. Their destination was halfway up a hillock at the base of a tree. Rotten wood planks were fashioned into makeshift markers stabbed in the ground. One was broken. Probably someone ripped it off for use in firewood. Or perhaps it crumbled under the elements due to shoddy craftsmanship. These markers, fashioned by clumsy but determined hands, were meant to indicate two graves. The broken one had half a name, Ilda. The other, Philip Boreas Greyrat. It was safe to assume the broken one once read the name Hilda Boreas Greyrat. The letters themselves were poorly formed. Lines created by unsteady hands, barely legible. Still, Reus knew the writer of those names. She would have been in deep denial at the time, knowing her.
refusing to accept the two of them were gone. It would have been so difficult. Reese could appreciate now how heartrending and sorrowful it must have been. This must have been part of why she was so grateful she learned how to write. This hits so hard because of that chapter with Ghislaine and Elise before they went to Ashra Kingdom. Again, that chapter indicated the idea that Ghislaine had given up on ever getting with somebody, like ever having a relationship, ever getting married. It had indicated there was a chance that Philip was going to take her as a mistress, take her in. And she had it. It hit me back then in that chapter. I think she liked Philip a lot. And there was a good chance that if Philip didn't die, she would have been in a relationship with him, probably bearing his child. But no, she had to bury him with her own hands. Yeah. And yes, indicating the idea that she probably was, unsteady hands. She probably took no joy in doing that. There's no question mark as if she liked Hilda or not, but still it's gonna hurt. These are two people that took her in when she was at her worst. The way that they sort of played out her story was that, yes, she was in the adventure party with Paul. That whole thing broke up, and she wasn't very good at taking care of herself. She got taken advantage of probably a lot. She didn't know how to read or write. That's why she wanted to learn how to read and write so badly, or at least read, is because she got taken, and math as well. She got taken for a ride by so many people and by merchants and whatnot. And so she had a miserable life. And then she gets taken in by Philip in order to train his daughter. And now you have that whole time where he was with her. And obviously, again, the Boris Grey Rats, they like their beast folk. And again, it indicated in that chapter with Elise that she liked him. And then she had to bury him. And not just bury... And this is like when that troubling thing about this whole situation. She didn't just bury Philip and Hilda. She buried their mutilated bodies. It indicated that she didn't want to talk about their condition. They were tortured, destroyed. Hilda was probably forced upon. This was not a good thing. And again, she had to bury them. And I like how she notes the idea that she was probably so happy that she could write their names. Ghislaine was so happy she learned how to write right there. I can mark these. And then later on, the hopes that probably later on at some point, Eris can find him. It so sucks, dude. It's just adding to that whole chapter with Ghislaine and talking about Philip. I'm like, damn it. Mother and father died here, huh? Yeah, seems that way. The disaster all those years ago had teleported Philip and Hilda here. For residents of the conflict zone, it was suspect that two Austrian nobles were here of all places. Why had they come? To what end? They hadn't even been allowed to give an answer before the captors concluded that they were spies. Philip had been a suave speaker, calculative, and intelligent. No one would contest that he was a savvy political player. Reese figured that he must have tried to negotiate. Given the suddenness of the teleportation, however, he was bound to have been in a state of shock, unable to explain how or why he had been transported. He had no way of verifying his identity, nor would he have known the political environment of his new surroundings, who was in charge, or even the name of the country. Who could have survived in this situation like that? His beloved wife at his back, in need of protection, but without allies. Eris and Rudius might have met the same fate, if not for Reserve's timely rescue, and for the man god's advice to trust him. You said you were going to trust Reserve anyways. Don't start playing into the man god now. He was going to protect you anyways. There were other cases like this as well. Lilia and Aisha found themselves in a precarious situation. For many people, the moment they were displaced, their lives were forfeit. The displacement incident was an almost incalculable calamity. Reese hadn't considered the gravity of it at the time, assuming such things were fairly normal in this world. That's an interesting thing there. I kind of wonder how, if they even care, how those people that possibly did all this to Philip and Hilda, if later on they found out about the displacement and they're like, oh damn. But that's actually a very interesting note there, is that Philip was very crafty. He's very smart. You would think that if he gets put off somewhere, he'd be able to talk way through it. Like, yeah, I'm a noble. I'll give you plenty of money. It's just there's something happened. We got transported here. I'll compensate you if you can get me out of here. We're not spies. We're transported. But the problem is that he don't know where he's at. Now, he could pick up on, if somebody were to say, oh, we are of this country or whatever, and that country was known to him. But again, the conflict zone, nations are rising and falling regularly.
For the idea of a noble in the Fatoa region to constantly have an update on what countries are currently building up or whatever and have the name of every single country there, very unlikely. So he could have no idea where he's at. For all he knows, he can be in the Middle continent. He could be on the Demon continent. He doesn't know what the Demon continent is. He could be on the Divine continent. He has no clue where he's at. He could be 2 doors down. He don't know. And thus, that makes it very difficult for him to craft some way of explaining why they're there and how to get out. And again, he's... What? Like, he's still trying to get his bearings on what just happened, let alone what to do to get back home. And then he's having to worry about Hilda at the same time. Ugh, this all sucks. Reese hadn't considered the gravity of it at the time, assuming such things were fairly normal in this world, but nothing of similar scope had happened since, and impressed upon Rudius what an unprecedented disaster they'd lived through. Father must have hated how things turned out. I'm sure he did. If he was still alive and could see us now, I wonder what he'd think about it. Eris kept her eyes on the grave. Rudius stood behind her, looking at her back. I figured he'd be delighted. She got it. She ended up with Rudius. He wanted that. I mean, Rudius gets into more details right here. Philip was an ambitious man. He wanted a union between Rudius and Eris so that he could rise to the top of the Boreas family. If the displacement incident had never taken place, he'd have surely pushed Rudius into doing exactly that. No matter how much Rudius protested about his promise to Sylphie to attend the university, he would have concocted some way to win Rudius over and arrange Sylphie to be a second wife. I could see that. I could see that feature too. Could he have assumed political power that way? They'd never know. I guess so. In a way, things had more or less ended up the way Philip hoped. The reigning Austrian king was indebted to Rudius. His words had gained influence, and he had connections amongst the Austrian nobility. He hardly held much responsibility, but that didn't matter. If Philip were alive, if he had merely been transported to another world like Rudius, only to return 10 years later, then he tried to use Rudius' current position to cozy up to Ariel. Yep. Yep. Knowing Philip's personality, Rudius could imagine him taking a position as her advisor, manipulating things from behind the scenes. Mother must be pleased too, right? Definitely. Hilda had long lamented her sons being taken by the Boreas main house, enough that she had initially taken out her frustrations on Rudius. She opened up her heart to Rudius by the end, but it wasn't long afterward, before they can really have much of a conversation, that the displacement incident occurred. Rudius never saw her again after that. Never would. Regardless, Eris and Rudius had gotten married and had a child together. A son they named Eris. He was Hilda's grandchild. I was not expecting to get hit on this one. He was Hilda's grandchild. Hilda would have doted on him. I just think about, like, God damn it. I just think about that scene with Hilda, like, grabbing Rudius in the anime. And I'm just thinking of Eris. And it hits so hard because it's like, in that scene, it's like Hilda's embracing Rudius because he's a boy of that family that she can finally dote on, because you keep taking my boys, and here's Rudius. He wasn't taken, so I'm going to grab him. And if she could see Eris, a child that she could be with that wouldn't get taken away, god damn, dude. And I feel so bad for Hilda. Hilda would have doted on him. Rudius could imagine her fussing over him constantly to make up for the sons that she couldn't raise. Hilda was a noble woman at heart, though. She surely would have discriminated against Sylphie and Roxy's children. I don't know where he's getting that. God damn it. Damn it, tear. Sorry, unintentional middle finger. I don't know where he gets the idea that she would discriminate against Roxy and Sylphie. I mean, maybe demons? Maybe demons? I guess elves, they're kind of more rarity, I guess. They can probably... I don't know where he's getting any of this from, though. I don't understand where any of this comes from. Gosh dang it, dude. Stupid tears. That would have caused some quarrels. But no, perhaps because she was also nobility, she would be more understanding than most about polygamy. Yeah, that for sure. That for sure. And I guess Cyrus is over here banging all these women, and then you have Philip over here imply that he was too. Then again, maybe she would have told Eris to poison the other two and never place as number one. That I wouldn't put past her. Nah, that would probably be bias speaking due to the intimidating encounters that he had with her. She would surely be pleased by their marriage. That is what counted. Again, Rudius was her last hope. Again, we solidified that, especially in Volume 6 when it gets into Eris's perspective. that this woman's like, you get in there and give yourself to him. He is your last hope, girl. Go in with your game face on, girl. Put the best silky outfit on. Get in there, girl. They felt like Rudius was the last hope for her. They had already planned on sending her off as an adventurer. She'll never be able to get with a guy. They can't stand her. She punches them and they give up. Rudius isn't given up. This is the one. Eris and Rudius stood in silence for a while. Rudius suspected Eris was lost in memories of her life in Roa. She had been moving nonstop since all this started. It was a long trip from the Demon Continent to the Fatoa region. From there, she went on to the Sword Sanctum and dedicated herself to training. They reunited, had a child together. Then while trying to raise Eris had been following Rudius here and there as a bodyguard. Had she had the time to breathe and lose herself to a few moments of nostalgia? I really do wonder. I sometimes feel like I want Refugin to do more character perspectives, because I think Eris especially is the most question mark character out of all of them, because I'm always interested to see if she's thinking about things a lot more than Rudius gives her credit for. I always assume that she's probably thinking about a lot of things, but unfortunately, Refugin does not like to give Eris perspective chapters, because I think that she's probably thinking through a lot of things, especially like right here. I want to know, is she hurting? I want to know what she's thinking. All we can really go by is like very, very quick to the point comments and expressions that are very hard to read. Hey, what are you doing? Rudius had begun pawing at the grave dirt. I was thinking about moving them. This place just seems a little bit lonely for them. Good boy. Good boy. I hadn't even thought about this when they got here. I'm like, good boy, Rudius. Yeah. Oh, you're right. I'll help. God, I'm thinking about what happens up in a minute. It would have been simpler to use earth magic to get their remains, but he elected to do it by hand with Eris. They carved out the hard earth until they found their bones. Rudius carefully washed them before wrapping them up in cloth to bring it with them. All right, let's get going. Fine. Rudius wondered if Ostra Kingdom would be a better place for the graves. It would be easier to visit in Shiraya, but Rudius thought it appropriate to take them home, to the place they were most accustomed. The Fatoa region was still in the midst of development. Not even a glimmer of its former glory had returned. Rudius also considered the capital Arch to be more appropriate. The graveyard used by the Boreas house could be best. Rudius, thank you for bringing me here. Yeah. Again, that gives that feeling that this was important to her. I want a perspective. We're funding a perspective chapter. He nodded, touched by her sincere expression of gratitude. After that, they stopped by the Ostra Kingdom, where they consulted Luke where best to bury them. There was a graveyard where many of the Boreas members were buried, but the circumstances forced them to put them to rest at a graveyard nearby. This one was a bit more isolated, created by the previous king about 10 years ago in secret. Luke had only learned of it recently himself. A marker of his grave read, "Here rests the ferocious lion." No one made any illusions as to who this phrase could be referring to. The gravekeepers must have been sworn to secrecy, because no amount of asking them yielded answers. Rudius could have guessed the identity of the person, in part because it would explain why Luke decided to lead them there. This is where they put Philip and Hilda to rest. Eris and Rudius put their hands together respectfully in front of their new graves and swore they would visit them again. That's where Soros is. 10 years ago, in secret, the king made it. It was isolated. No name on it. Ferocious king. That's where Soros is. I mean, like Rudius is like, I can guess because this is where Luke brought us. He only learned about it recently, and Luke brought us here. Why would he bring us here to put Hilda and Philip here? This is where his father's at. This is where Soros at. Again, to give perspective here, with the Fatoa displacement incident, he became a political advantage tool. They took him down. They took down Soros when Soros was wanting to rebuild the land. He was wanting to give all of his fortune away to rebuild it. He was going to give everything away. He just wanted to save those lands. They didn't want that, and they took it as an opportunity to get rid of him. So he became a casualty to this political crap. The king showed him respect, because they probably wanted to just dump his bones somewhere. Just get rid of him. Just throw him out somewhere else. He doesn't belong to be in our nation. He's garbage. No, the king said, bury them there. We can't do that. They would know. Just don't put his name on there. Instead, put, here rests the ferocious lion. Oh, we're going to bring back Saros. We're bringing back Saros in this whole picture. Oh, it freaking hurts. This freaking chapter is so much gut punching. Now, I don't really recall if they've ever referred to him as a lion, but again, I can sort of tie that to him on the idea of that dude was loud. Dude was bolsterous. He was strong. I could see that being the case. Again, this is the person that was constantly like just downplaying Paimon. Like he was like, yeah, let's get Paul up here. At least Paul is strong. This guy's weak. What is this idiot right here? Get him out of here. He's weak. He was all about strength. After 2 failed objectives, Reese expected to be admonished for it. He pictured a variety show with Orsted pulling a string and the floor giving way underneath him. But neither of them expected the Sword God to suddenly vanish, and they'd already taken into consideration that they wouldn't be able to locate the North God. Reese felt a mounting sense of powerlessness, having missed 2 meetings with powerful allies. But further they got from the loops Orsted knew, the more they'd encountered the unexpected. Reese planned to be genuine with Orsted about going out of his way to visit Philip and Hilda. That had taken considerable more time than the search for Kalman. I have returned, Sir Orsted. Unfortunately, the Sword God and the North God were... He lifted his head, expression so intimidating that it cut Rius off. There was anger on his face. He must be pissed that Rius took a detour. No, that was just his face. That's just my face. Even if he wasn't angry, Rius was curious what he had been studying before he arrived. He had a number of stone tablets lined up in front of him. They almost looked like grave markers, but they were actually communication devices that they set up earlier. The number of tablets had increased. Before, they only had one for Ostra Kingdom, Milis, and the King Dragon Realm. But after teleporting across the Demon Continent, their number had increased. It looked more like a server room than a CEO's office. You can see like a room out here and there's just tablets all lined up.
Look at this.
One of the tablets was glowing faintly. This was one linked to Etof's fortress. The message inscribed on it was short and simple. We have captured Kishirika Kishidishu. Damn. And that is chapter 9. Holy crap. That was a really, really, really long recording for that. I wasn't expecting that much in this chapter, honestly. Let's try this. Chapter 10, The Second Eye. The Necros Fortress in the Demon Continent's Gaslow territory was known as being the most impregnable of all. Deep within its bowels, in the scarcely used dungeon, resided a prisoner. Their hands were bound by shackles, a metal ball attached at her feet. She'd been given a blue and white striped pajamas to wear. She looked pitiful. There was a growl coming from the girl, but it wasn't her voice. It was her stomach. You know exactly who it is immediately. It snarled to express her displeasure, agreeing with the frustration she felt at her circumstances. Or it was just empty. The door of the cell was open to reveal 2 towering figures hidden in black armor. They forced her to her feet and dragged her out. She had no choice but to go with them. An angry, unpleasant sound reverberated down the hallway as she dragged a metal ball. Still, she didn't strain under the weight. She was stronger than she looked. She was led out of the dungeon and to the flight of stairs, their destination, the throne room. After arriving, they shoved her ahead, and she lurched forward, stumbling into a circular space, lifting her head to the throne ahead of her, a place she once occupied in the past, but now a demon king sat upon it. Etof! The moment the prisoner laid eyes on Etof, her cheeks flushed red in anger. What is the meaning of this? She roared with all the power that she could muster, voice erupting from the base of her very, very empty stomach. Perhaps that's what gave it power. In contrast, the Demon King, the most feared in the whole continent, merely adjusted her posture and scowled at her captive. How wretched! The departed Necros would lament to see you like this. Father told me to live how I wanted, only because you were a moron who would not listen to other people. He must have known it was the only way you could live. He gave up on you. I am no moron. Demon King Etof was absolutely furious, but the prisoner didn't shrink. Instead, she snorted with derisive laughter. Doubtless, you're a moron amongst morons. Even you must understand that. All someone has to do is dangle something promising in front of you, and you haven't got the brains to think about it. Etof shook her head vigorously. That's not true. Cal said I was smart. Then I'm a quick learner. Etof, that was... The prisoner gave a meaningful pause, as if to draw out the moment. The next words she would have to say would cut deep, and she knew that these ones, in particular, she must not ever mutter to Etof. Mere flattery. Yeah! The Demon King's rage boiled over. The surrounding knights flew on her to pin her back, but she knocked them away easily. They then took up a formation like a rugby scrummage and pinned their master back. The Demon King flailed her fist through the air, screeching, You rotten little weakling! I'll kill you! I'll tear you limb. You'll bite it again before I'm through! Yeah, if it bothers you that much, learn to count. Gah! Her taunts provoked the Demon King into gathering her power to force her knights back.
Lady Kishirika, please cease his antagonizing. If you continue to provoke Lady Bantov, she...
Shut your mouths. I only came along because you promised me some delicious treats. And look how you treated me. I won't be satisfied until I fully voice my complaints.
Yes, Kishirika was lured by a knight that stripped himself of armor and tempted her.
Little girl, we'll give you some sweets if you just come with us.
That's how she found herself here. Kishirika was the one that fell for the promise of something without giving so much of a thought. She'd fallen for the prospect of food. It was afterwards that she realized that she had been deceived. Worse, the men hadn't been good on their promise. She'd gotten no treats at all. Of course.
You guys haven't even told me what you took me captive for. What are you claiming I did wrong? I haven't.
Kishirika hesitated for a moment.
I haven't done anything, have I?
She fidgeted, rubbing her hands together. There was too mmany possibilities to rule out. She dabbled in all sorts of evils. Too many. Even she was self-aware enough to know that wrongdoings was the most of what she did.
You haven't done anything wrong.
That was surprising to Kishirika. It had taken mere seconds for Etov's fury to subside. She knew how futile it would be to be angry at this particular captive.
Then tell me why. No matter how unreasonable you are not so evil that you would capture me with no reason whatsoever. The only time you do something like this is when you have the wrong idea about something. Or someone's deceived you into, so that's it. Someone tricked you again. No one deceived me. That's what deceived people say. All right then, if that's what brought all this about, tell me everything. There's still time. I could save you before it's too late. And you do something irreversible. So why don't you remove these shackles first?
It's so funny that she's playing into this, and it shows later on that she doesn't have to. It's so crazy. Kishirika thrusted her hands in front of herself, but Etov wasn't looking at her. She stared off in the distance, lost in thought.
Deception is committed through conversation. That wasn't the case for us. We fought one another, and at the end, I admitted defeat. You liar. You mean to tell me someone ridiculously competitive as you admitted defeat? The one who forced me to admit defeat is this man here.
Etov pointed in the direction of a mage, swathed in gray robes. He had a terrible expression on his face, the kind of smarmy, perverted type one might expect to find a man with 3 wives waiting on him hand and foot. Or perhaps he was trying too hard to smile.
It's you, Rubius.
Close, but not quite.
I guess it might be possible, with that ridiculous amount of mana you have, to be able to...
Kishirika shuddered in fear. She had met this human mage twice in the past. The first time, she laughed how eerie the amount of mana he had was. The second time, she laughed at his magical prowess in being able to fend off Etov. She wasn't laughing this time. A man who could command Etov and convince the Demon King to capture Kishirika wasn't funny. The mage chuckled, nevertheless, as he looked down at her. His lips rested on an unsettling smile. To tell the truth, there's something I want to give you.
What could that be? Some kind of last rites?
Haha, something much better than that. He chuckled heartily, and his grin stretched even wider.
I won't be misled. You menfolk are always like this. Don't try to trick me with your sweet talk.
Although she resisted, she had nowhere to run. The tremor in her voice betrayed her strong front as well. She began scanning the area, looking for an escape. As she crossed her legs, trying to hold her bladder despite the fear. I wonder if you'll be able to say that after you see this. He lowered his bag and produced a black box. Kishirika shrieked. Her terror swelled as she imagined what was inside. Once you have this, you'll want to do anything I tell you.
What?
Inside the box was a ring-shaped object, as big as a fist. It was golden, with a strange creamy white coating on it. It almost resembled mold. All the hair on her body stood on end. For as creepy as its shape and color was, it emitted a sweet smell.
Oh, what is that thing? What do you want me to do with it?
Haha, this is what you want to do with it. He took it in his hand, approached her, bringing it to her mouth. At the same time, 2 knights flanking her clasped their hands on her shoulders. There was no escape. Say, ah.
No, stop!
It's a donut. Orsted Corporation's making donuts in 2 different ways. Actually, technically, Aisha. We got Aisha donuts. We got Aisha rice and Aisha donuts. The demon world's great emperor, Kishirika Kishirisu, nibbled on the donut he brought her, while tears poured down her cheeks.
Does something so delicious really exist? I cannot believe it.
Aisha had done him a favor in creating it, using fresh eggs and sugar that they got from the holy country of Milis. Apparently, Nanahoshi had told her about it. Through Aisha's own diligent study, she managed to recreate it. It was a simple matter of gathering the ingredients, since their house cooked up a lot of fried foods.
I struggle to fathom this. Perhaps the entire reason I was born was to savor this flavor of this delicious creation.
It had been a long time since Rudius had saw Kishirika, and at first she was in a wretched mood. Now she seemed perfectly fine. The magic of donuts. Rudius had actually asked Roxy to sample it before bringing it here. and it had been incredibly effective. Rui's never seen her look that happy before. Sadly, that meant he'd lost that on a donut. He'd lost to a donut. That freaking picture, though. She looks so freaking happy with her donuts. Donuts! I want to get a display of that. No, Reese established the roots for the goods to come from Millis. In that sense, he was the one that created that smile. Father-in-law, mother-in-law, he was making their daughter happy, just as promised. Yeah, I could see Roxy loving donuts. I could see her being a little shinobu loving them donuts. Well, they were also Aisha's donuts, but still, Roxy's reaction proved the donuts were super effective against demons. However, just as mana was finite, so was magic, or rather, the number of donuts. Upon eating 12 of them, Kishirika regarded Rudius with great sorrow.
Is this all you really have?
Yes. There was a long silence.
If you give me more, I'll grant you whatever you desire. How's that?
Those are precisely the words I wanted to hear. As Rudius flashed a smile, Kishirika's eyes widened in shock. She wrapped her arms around herself protectively.
So it's my body you want after all? No matter how many delicious foods you offer, this body belongs to body. But after treating me with something so scrumptious,
I'm currently upholding a vow of abstinence, so no need for that.
Really? Abstaining too much is bad for the body, you know?
Well, if I find myself unable to resist any longer, I will ask one of my wives instead.
Wives? Oh, that's right. You already got married. But you children of men, do mature quickly.
First, Lady Kishirika, I would entreat you to use your power to inform me where Geese is.
Oh, Geese, you say?
Reese nodded before describing the man, including the name that he signed on the letter.
Yes. I do feel like I've heard of this person before. Wait a moment.
It's so bad that she knows who this dude is. She used her eye while cream still stained her lips. Her eye spun in place, almost like a slot machine, until it came to one that she used. This particular eye was known as the Eye of All-Seeing. With it, she glared into the distance, scrunching her face.
Ah, yes. This looks delicious.
She muttered to herself while she continued to scan off in the far distance.
Found him. He's at the eastern end of the northern territories, in the Behero Kingdom, there, in the depths of the forest. He seems to be speaking with someone. But the man does have a face of a villain.
Kishirika snickered. She leaned a bit further in the direction that she found them, compelled by curiosity.
Now, let's see. Who is he speaking with?
Her expression instantly clouded over.
I can't see him anymore.
Her expression suddenly turned deathly serious as she closed her eyes. She leaned her head back, letting her eyes rest for a moment. It was only several seconds later that she finally opened them again.
This sensation. Yeah, I know it. You're currently an enemy of the man god, correct?
Gone was the jovial and mischievous atmosphere that she usually had, replaced by something more solemn and reserved. Yes.
And if you're fighting the man god, that must mean that you aligned yourself with the dragon god.
He hesitated for a moment before answering. Yes. Okay. Where do I start? Where do I start? She looks over there. Northern Territories. Got it. That's where we're kind of aiming towards. Up in the Northern Territories. Just east of his home. Interesting thing is that she sees Geese and somebody else. Who is he talking to? She looks harder. Her expression clouds over. I can't see him anymore. Her expression suddenly turned deathly serious as she closed her eyes. And then she starts asking about the man god. I had two theories here. One, is this the North God, presumably third, North God Kalman III, and Geese has met up with him in the Northern Territories, in that area, that northern region, and that's where they're sort of connecting there? Because that would make sense, the idea that he was supposed to meet up with Geese somewhere before possibly, as we kind of see here towards the later part of here, probably going to set up something for Rudius. So this could be the North God right here. He's speaking to him, and then at some point, he uses something to block himself from her being able to see him, because she mentioned something about things being blocking or whatever. Or that could possibly just the far sighting. Or could it possibly be that she could use her powers to see the man god? That's what I'm also curious about. Was Geese talking to the man god right here, and she was able to see him very briefly, and then suddenly she's not able to see him anymore, and then she goes serious? I could see that. She had to have seen something here in this moment that tied it to the man god. What could that be, other than the person that she's seen with Geese right there was the man god? This is the Eye of All-Seeing. There's a possibility that she can see the man god through that process. But it's typically implied that whenever somebody sees the man god, he is pulling them to the Barren Lands to talk there. But there still could be a possibility that they're coming there. And this was indicated with the whole moment where Geese was talking to the man god in the bar. Because he was talking to the bar guy while he's talking to the man god sitting next to him. It implied there could be two things here. That Rudius, whenever he talks to the man god, he never leaves his body. I think at some point they implied the idea that sometimes when he was in bed with, his wives, that they indicated that he was still there, whatever, mentally or physically. He was obviously there physically. He was in a dream, and the idea is that he was being pulled there and his body was remaining. But it sort of implied the idea that he possibly could be in his mind at the moment, sitting there present. Either way, the other idea here could be that with Rudius, he's talking to the man god with his body in the Barren Lands, whereas everybody else, they're actually still there, and the man god comes to them in this world. That possibly the man god could pull him to the barren worlds, but everybody else, the man god has to come to this world and talk to them. So she could have seen the man god. She couldn't quite see it. Who is he talking to? He's got a face of a villain. Now again, it could be possibly the North god, but it didn't indicate Geese seeing him as like a villainous looking person. Now she could have been talking about Geese having the villainous face, but she was referencing he seems to be speaking to someone, but the man has a face of a villain. I think she's seen the man god. This eye allowed her to see the man god, whereas normally people would not be able to see him. And he probably noticed it and zoop, disappeared. Get out of there. Quickly, get out. And again, that would make sense as to why she suddenly says the sensation, yes, I know it, you're currently a member of the man god. Now, it could be that she can see with this all-seeing eye some sort of indication that they are marked as a disciple of the man god. They have an aura or something, or some kind of label on them that has marked them as one of his disciples that he can communicate to. That could be as well. But yeah, her change in tone here quickly. Yes.
And if you're fighting the man god, that must mean that you align yourself with the dragon god.
He hesitated for a moment. And I could see him hesitating there. I could see him totally hesitating here. Yes. Kishirika folded her arms and lowered her head, taking a pensive pose. After several seconds, she glanced back up at the sky, like a thoughtful soul might gaze right at the moon, even if it was daylight.
And that's off. You've aligned yourself with this boy. Yes. So that's it. This must be destiny, I suppose.
Kishirika was acting more like a sage. I totally immediately picked up on this. She's thinking back there when Bodigadi fought Laplace. She's thinking right back there where they were deceived by the man god. Randolph implied the idea that he learned from Bodigadi, don't associate with the man god, because the man god screwed with them so bad. They got them fighting and destroyed something bad with them, which makes me think that it's something more than just deceiving Bodigadi to go fight Laplace. I think there's something else here. There's something really deep-rooted here. Possibly Bodigadi and Kishirika were deceived by him, and they lost many of their people, lost their abilities, lost their strength, lost their people. So many things they probably lost besides just them two being deceived. And it could have been simply the idea that Bodigadi was thrown in that fight for her sake, and it wasn't something that he should have done. Which makes me believe that a lot of this stuff behind Rajerd and Bodigadi was probably Bodigadi understanding, yeah, I was deceived during that time too. Like, there's a thought process there that he might see that you are another casualty just like I was. Kishirika was acting more like a sage. What in the world was going on with her? Maybe something suspicious slipped in the donuts. Lady Kishirika, do you mean to say that you know the man god?
Yep. The two of us have a bit of history. Frankly speaking, I would like to avoid ever getting involved with him again.
A history, you say?
Nothing that remarkable. Just that a mere 4,200 years ago, he manipulated me and Bodigadi. He was after Laplace's life.
4,200 years ago? She was referring to the Second Great Human Demon War. If I recall correctly, that was when the fighting god battled against the dragon god.
Sure is. Body donned the fighting god armor to protect me, face off against the demonic dragon king Laplace.
Wait, Body as in His Majesty Bodigadi? Maurice's shock was immeasurable. Did this mean that Bodigadi was actually the fighting god all along? Orson had never told him about that, though Reese felt like he heard something similar to that before. Randolph, he believed. So what he said was true. At that time, Reese couldn't determine whether he was talking about the same guy or not. Yeah, because you're always too busy trying to think that Bodigadi's an idiot. your dislike or your weird preconceived notions about the Demon King seems to really throw you off bad, dude. Yeah, I got that indication. Now, this is cementing it, but I honestly, during that time, if I remember correctly, during that conversation about Bodigadi, I was flip-flopping between the idea. Randolph made it almost sound, and they're making it sound like this as well. They were making it sound as if Bodigadi went and stole the fighting god armor from the fighting god. Like, the fighting god made that armor, Body Gotti stole it to go fight him. Not that Body Gotti, the fighting god, went and got the fighting god armor and went and fought Laplace. He said when the fighting god battled against the dragon god. And she said, sure is, Body donned the fighting god armor. So she's not denying him saying when the fighting god. She would have said, no, it wasn't the fighting god, it was Body. But again, it could still go to my original thought process there, is that in the history books, the fighting god battled the dragon god. And it could have been that he failed, and then Body donned his armor and fought the dragon god. It could be both. I don't know. It's very weird. It's very weird. It is still very weird that right here again it says against the dragon god, and then she says the demonic dragon king, Laplace. So it kind of keeps flip-flopping that whole like reference in the books and versus what actually people called him. Again, I guess it feels like it right here is confirming that he is the fighting god, because she's not denying it. But it's still weird that it's not coming out and saying it specifically.
It's been a long time since he lost the fighting god armor, but if Body Gotti shows up, best be careful. He still feels indebted to that rotten man god after all this time.
Gosh, I need an info. I need info. I mean, we got Geese's story, but it's like, God, I need some info. Why is he still following him? And she hates it. It's like the man god did something for Body Gotti. He feels indebted, so he's doing all this crap. Even if it was him being tricked, Kishirika feels obviously that he's been tricked. And right here, she obviously really doesn't like what the man god is doing to him, and she doesn't want to get involved with the man god, but Body Gotti is still doing it. Which, yes, this right here is pretty much flagging to all get that Body Gotti is going to be at the man god's side. And it sucks.
He may end up being your enemy.
After a long pause, Reis nodded. All right. Body Gotti was such a cheerful, bright man. Reis didn't want to fight him if he could help it. Still, he had to make a mental note that he might end up being on the other side. If at all possible, he'd hope that he'd forget whatever debt he felt and join him instead.
Well, since you're going to have Atolf at your side, I doubt Body will be a match to you in his current state. I'd ask you to spare his life if you can help it, though.
Body Gotti was Atolf's younger brother and Kishirika's fiancé. Family, in other words. Demons were quick to let go of grudges from Reis's experience, but not so magnanimous that they would stand quietly by as family were murdered. Very well. Although, he's not easily killed in the first place anyways. True.
No, he's not. The immortal demon's strong point is their tenacity.
Kishirika snuck a glance at Atolf. The latter was posed proudly. But Reis had a feeling Kishirika wasn't exactly complimenting her.
And also, come a little closer.
She beckoned him. As he obeyed and leaned in, she cupped her hand over her mouth.
Bring your face a little tiny closer.
What is it?
There, take this.
She thrusted her fingers into his left eye. Indescribable pain shot through his entire socket. He screamed at the top of his lungs, trying to instinctively pull away. She grabbed him by the hair, pinning him so he couldn't run. As it occurred to him, he figured it was fine not to run.
Oh, deciding to behave yourself, will you?
He willingly let her work. It was painful, like a splitting pain assaulted his brain. This had come without warning, and she was digging around in his eye socket, but he knew what she was doing.
There, finished.
The pain remained, and he could see nothing from his eye. However, he didn't panic. He experienced this before, and it wasn't permanent.
It's my personal policy to reward a person with an eye whenever they treat me with something delicious. This will be your second eye.
That makes me believe that Cliff gave her something sweet at some point. Reis pressed his hand over his left eye, the pain slowly receding, and he knelt before Kishirika.
I'm not the least bit concerned about the battle of yours, but I do have a bone to pick with the man god after all he did. That's why I'm giving you this as a parting gift. It's the Eye of Distant Sight. All it allows you to do is see at a distance, but it should prove useful.
Eye of Distant Sight. Reis gave it a spun by closing his right eye and focusing his mana on his left. It worked the same way as the right. Adjusting mana, he can gaze into the far distance. Reis moved his head and focused again. His vision flashed, soaring through the sky. It was like a camera with a zoom function. Next, he saw a crater with a town nestled in the middle of it. I'm assuming that's the crater where Kishirika's castle is. At first I thought that was going to be a Fatoa region, but no. However, he couldn't make out the entirety of the town. I'm wondering if that's the crystals on the walls is causing a sort of distortion there. When he tried to gaze even further, he found his vision couldn't go further than some mountains. Again, I'm thinking there's certain things in certain areas, like maybe high mana capacities that are causing disturbances. He could make out the details and patterns of the rocks of the mountains, and a great tortoise which threw its head up in a yawn, but no further. If there was something obstructing the view, his vision would stop there. If there was something obstructing his view, again, I don't think it's actual physical objects. I think it's probably a mana or something, or a magic circle of some sort. He cut off the flow of mana and immediately reverted to a normal vision. This new demon eye merely allowed him to see far away. It wasn't incredibly powerful, nor did it seem particularly easy to use. Still, he was already thinking of scenarios where it might be useful. Again, I think this is actually a perfect choice. She probably chose this purposely because it's probably easier for him to, he says it's difficult to use, but it's probably easy for him to control. Because that's what was it, Roger was saying? Or maybe it was Rudius implying this at some point, that the idea of having more than one eye would probably drive a person mad. Like, it's very difficult to use, and having two of them would probably drive a person mad. That's like Ghislaine only has one, so she has an eye patch most of the time. Probably doesn't bother her at all. Cliff has one, keeps an eye patch on it, doesn't bother him at all. Whenever he uses it, it's a lot of information, but if he keeps it covered up, it won't drive him crazy. Having two means that you have to constantly control the mana flow to both eyes in order to have a normal vision at times.
The way you are now, 2 demon eyes should be no difficult for you to handle.
Thank you.
Yes. Well then, Rudius, feel free to rely upon me again should you ever need me. Provided it doesn't involve the man god. I'll be happy to help.
As long as it doesn't involve the man god, you got me. The donuts she really loves. Rely on me whenever, but not the man god. Kishirika nimbly released the shackles from her hands, then brought her hand up with a down chop, removing the ball and chain from her leg. Finally, she yanked off the striped pajamas, revealed her usual bondage outfit.
Farewell then, wah!
Attempting to leap and make her escape, she faceplanted on the ground thanks to Atof's grip on her ankle. Again, I like the fact that, like, she's just like, all right, that's all you needed? All right, let's get rid of all this stuff. Like, she was never captured. She was probably waiting for her snack, but again, Rudius kind of implies here in a minute, like, did she intend to be captured? Did she come here on purpose? It makes you wonder if she's supposed to be here. I don't want to say it. Man, God. That does click. Again, I'm assuming that she's seen the man god when she looked over there. But there is a possibility the man god said that somebody's going to offer you snacks and go there. And now she's there, and Rudius comes in there, and suddenly she's like, he's involved with the man god, isn't he? Again, we've already implied that we have 3 disciples already. Again, if there's a 4th, or if he's switching.
Wait, what do you want? You have some nerve interrupting my smooth exit.
Blood trickled from her nose as she fixed Etoff with a glare. Etoff stared down at her, not the least bit bothered.
Do me a favor, too. What is it? You took me captive for no reason and threw me into a prison. I won't be doing you any favors. Unhand me. Shoo.
Slapping Etoff's hand away, she wiped the blood from her nose. Etoff wasn't easy to be rebuffed. She grabbed Kishirika by the collar, pulling her leather top and revealing her flat chest beneath. Rudius shook his head, resisting temptation.
Tell me where Al and Alex are. Rudius needs some strong fighters by his side, right? Those 2 should be perfect for this. What? I gave Rudius a reward just a moment ago, and I told him someone's location. I even gave him a demon eye as a special extra thanks. I can give him no more.
Rudius was pretty sure those were nicknames for the 2 surviving North gods. Those 2 tended to call them by those nicknames. Rudius didn't remember bringing it up to Atoff that he was looking for them, but they were her family. Perhaps she hadn't needed any prompting to bring them up.
Tell me. I told you already. No.
Kishirika seemed disinclined to fulfill the request. It was a good thing he learned about Geese's location, but he still knew nothing about what he was scheming. He needed to increase his numbers of allies, if at all possible. Rudius then remembered the skull-shaped ring on his finger, Randolph's ring. Lady Kishirika, my lady, please, look at this.
What's this? I feel as though I've seen this somewhere before, and it gives me an ill premonition.
Consider it Randolph's request.
Randolph? I remember now. That was his ring.
Her expression was almost theatrical. All the color drained from her face.
Now I see, yes. His request, is it? He's just certainly look after me. I always wondered why. Each time I did so, he'd say, you can repay me for this later, at some point in the future. All right? All with that unsettling laugh. Each time I glimpsed that smile, I'd tremble with fear, wondering what vile thing he would ask for me.
Do as we ask, and you can consider all your debts repaid to him. Dude, you're wasting all of his wishes. What the hell, dude? Her face lit up.
All of them, you say? Well, guess I have no choice. Yes, wait just a moment.
She's like all for that. I bet she's fed him over and over again. I bet he's cooked things for her all the time. Searching again, it didn't take long for her to find what she was looking for. She was handy search engine.
I don't know about Al. He seems to be somewhere in Asra, I think. But the mana there is thick.
I bet Al is probably one of the guys that was with Ariel's group there. I think it was Shandel or something like that. I wonder if that's an alias. I wonder if he is, God, I wonder if he's there. I don't know why else he'd be in Astra. But did they imply which one was which? I don't know if they've ever implied which one was which. Because obviously the third is probably going to be in the north. I think he's working with Geese. Yeah, Rudius doesn't even separate them there. I bet Al's probably the second. If the second is working with Ariel, though, holy crap. I'd wonder about that.
Asra, I think, but the man is thick there. Or he's using something that wards off my ability to see him.
That's what I was kind of wondering about. When we were talking about the idea of him using Kishirika to find Geese, I was wondering if Geese would have ended up having something that blocks her from seeing him. But again, right now, I'm starting to think that if the man god's trying to orchestrate this with Geese, they probably would want her to show where he's at right now.
Either way, it's all blurry. Alex is walking down a highway. Looks like he's heading towards the direction of Berhil Kingdom.
That makes me believe that he is not with Geese. That was somebody else there. That was the man god. That was totally the man god. If Alex is the third, again, the one that's working with Geese, then Geese was talking to the man god, and she's seen him briefly. Damn. Which makes me wonder if he takes sort of a form of something physical and normal to somebody else. Again, there is a side of me that believes that there's a possibility the man god only looks like what he looks like based on what he wants, who he's talking to. I don't know if I'd have to check Geese's chapter again. I don't know if they ever imply the idea that he was looking at somebody that was like basically mosaic like Rudius does. I forget.
Easy now. Perfect. Rudius, when you go to Berhil Kingdom, seek out the man named Alexander. He should be able to lend you his strength.
Yeah, I'm thinking Alexander was the third because I think they talked about him before. I think they named him before when they were talking about the one that was training him that they fought against. I think that is the third. Nope. Nope. That kind of makes me wish that he would, if he does go there, he brings Atop with him. Damn. I mean, it kind of implies here in a minute that he's going to go in there ready. So he needs to bring Atop. He needs to bring her with him. All right. Northgod Kalman III was heading to the Berhil Kingdom. Right there, he says third. Shut up, Andrew. Shut up, Andrew. The same place as Geese was. Rudius had wondered if it could be coincidence. Knowing the man god, he'd realized that Kishirika could track down Geese, right? Then this was bound to be a trap. Yep.
Now then, that's all right. I'll be going now. All my limbs are free. No one's got to put their hands on me, right? Good then. I'm off.
Adolf stood with her arms folded over her chest. Kishirika disappeared behind her, leaving Rudius contemplating all the info that she gave him. As her voice faded away, Rudius wondered if she let herself get caught on purpose. I wonder. Maybe she possibly foresees something. She could have possibly seen that Rudius was looking for him and was like, okay, I'll just go through them. Maybe I'll get a snack at the same time. I don't know. I think she'd be willing to let Atop capture her versus anybody else that was possibly could have captured her because there was a wanted poster out for her. She really was like a storm rolling through unexpectedly. Whatever her motives were, this visit was fruitful. Rudius had a new eye of distant sight and very useful information. Parting with Atop, Rudius went to Shiraya. He knew Geese's location and the North God Kalman III, one of the 7 great powers, was heading in that direction. Oddly, neither the Sword God nor Kalman II's precise locations were easy to ascertain. This gave Rudius a bad feeling. The real question was what to do now. If possible, he wanted to decrease the number of enemies while increasing his allies. If Geese were to sense him nearby, he would probably run for it. The only situation in which he wouldn't would be if he already gained enough strength. In that case, it would be wiser for Rudius to do the running. Perhaps it would be best to scout ahead. He could use the time to seal off his escapes, spread his own units, and find a way to corner him. It was a shame Kishirika disappeared so soon. With her, he could have gotten more detailed information on the situation there. Isn't there some way that he can entice the search engine to stay in one place for a while? If make a donut factory, yep. If he made a donut factory and shipped products directly to a hideout prepared for her, that might work. He's going to turn an office into nothing but Kishirika's little personal donut factory. Rudius made his way home while weighing his options. Yeah, I think based on what Geese says in that chapter where he is recruiting presumably the North God, this is not supposed to be the final battle. It's kind of more painting it as if that conclusion is that he's talking about killing Rudius in that chapter, then yes, and this is the next point which we see that possibility. Now, to be clear, the person that he was talking about in that chapter where he was recruiting this guy could be somebody else that he's already killed. And now, because he said like something, I have something else for you to take care of, go here first. There's somebody else that you need to take care of that's working for the Orsted. He could have already killed whoever that is. Or it could be right now. And right now, like I said, he said to go meet me here, and Kalman's walking up. Geese teleported over there. He probably did some other things, and he teleported right there, and Kalman's still coming in here. And so that makes sense. This is all lining up to what he said. Meet me here, and I'll give you more information. We got to take care of somebody else first before Orsted. So what it means is that it seems like Geese is wanting to take out Rudius first right here, and then he's going to take the band that he's developed to go after Orsted. So right from there, he's probably going to take out, his plan is to take out Rudius right here in this eastern region with Kalman, and then go from there probably straight over, meet up with the Sword God, and go right after Orsted, because he probably knows Orsted's right there. Or he possibly knows that Orsted's there.
Oh, welcome back, Mew. We were on our way back ourselves, too. What a coincidence.
Rudius happened to bump into Lenny and Presena. It was so rare for the two of them to be like this. They were occupying his living room sofa, sitting proudly as if they owned the place. No, it wasn't them looking arrogant. It was Eris. The two beast folk were resting their heads on her lap, letting her stroke their ears. They were completely submissive under her stroking. It was like a harem scene.
Welcome home. Boss, I got a report for you, nya.
Linnea said. Presena followed up.
It's some good news.
Neither of them tried to peel themselves away. In fact, their throats seemed to be vibrating, purring from the attention. Eris had them both wrapped around her finger.
Here you go.
Presena held out the letter for him. Not very professional behavior, but he let it pass.
A report came from the east, nya. They said they found someone exactly like that figurine. Green hair, a red jewel on the forehead, a support. That was what was written in the support, nya.
The support? That was what was written in the support? What the hell? That was what was written in the support? That was what was written in the support, yeah? That was what was written in the support, yeah? That was what was written in the support anyhow. Mew. Damn it, 7Cs. Damn it, 7Cs. But no, I think the moment that I read this, Geese and the Man God has already infiltrated Rue Quagmire Mercenary Band. And I talked about this way back when Rudius was first setting this up. I'm like, what's going to happen eventually is they're going to get somebody in there and they're going to mess with it or destroy it. The fears that I had at the time was having Aisha so involved with that. When that mercenary band is literally created for the sake of building up forces to take out Laplace and help them fight against the Man God, that the Man God is going to infiltrate that place eventually and destroy the entire thing. And Aisha was going to get involved with it. And that's going to suck. Right here, I'm already feeling like it's going to be the case. Now, it could be that Rejerd is over there, but it could be that somebody's saying something. The green hair throws me off. Now, Rejerd could have finally accepted the hair and no longer shaves his head, but I don't think that's the case. It was talking about the fact that the curse itself was fading. That Rudius said, the Man God said, and he could have been lying. It could have been the Man God was lying back there. It was implying that the curse itself was fading. And that there was a possibility his hair could possibly go back to normal. Or it could be that their hair stays green. That could be a possibility too. It could be a thing where it's not like, you know, the whole thing with like the Laplace aspect with Sylphie. And that his hair could always be green. It never implied the idea that they took upon the spears and their hair became green. It was just implying the idea that the hair itself was indication of Laplace, his curse, because Laplace's hair was green, and he put that curse upon the spears and gave it to Spurds. The assumption is that Spurds aren't supposed to have green hair. It's just they became green hair, and then they became widely known as Spurds that were these evil beings because they killed a bunch of people while having that green hair. So they're just known for having that. And the remaining ones for hundreds of years had just been basically Rejerd and possibly a couple others that might have survived. I wonder if his hair is even still green. That's my question mark. I wonder if his hair is still green at this point. I think this letter is bullcrap. I think this report is BS. I think Geese had this letter sent over. Or it's just possibly the Man God knows that Rejerd is going that direction, and knowing that Rejerd is important to them, Man God had Geese set that up as the place to lure Rudius over there. And thus, a report will be sent. The Man God knows a report's going to be sent, and thus Rudius is going to come there. Because again, in that same segment, during that chapter where he was recruiting the North God, it implied that there's somebody there that's very important. And yeah, in the midst of it, the North God Kalman can kill his Superd. Oh, really? Rudius excitedly snatched the letter and reviewed the contents. The report was incredibly precise. It recounted the discovery of a foreign merchant making a deal with a man. The man had a weapon, a white shaft with cloth covering the tip. He wore an armored headband over his forehead and was swathed in thick robes. With a hood pulled over his head to conceal his eyes, it was only thanks to his sudden gust of wind that his green hair was spotted. It also exposed the human clothes hidden beneath his thick shroud. The man had moved secretly, trying to avoid people's notice while he bought medicine. I wonder if he found a Superd and he's trying to bring them medicine. I wonder if he actually found a Superd up there. That explained why he's been gone so long, because he talked about seeing something over there, and he went over there, and he possibly discovered somebody, and he's been taking care of them this entire time. Their informant failed to confirm what medicine he purchased, but the man's appearance matched Rejerd closely. What? Reese gasped at the final line. Location of discovery, Bahiril Kingdom, about a half day west of the second biggest city, Errol, in a village close to the Earthworm's Forest Valley. Bahiril Kingdom, the third time he had heard that same location in a single day. No matter how dense he was. He's like, not this time. I'm usually pretty clueless. Not this time. You ain't gonna get past me this time. Rudius is gonna finally pick up on something quickly, which means it's probably misdirection. The one time Rudius picks up on this stuff quickly, this will be the one time it's not actually gonna happen. No matter how dense he was, even Rudius realized what was going on here. Now I get it. Geese, North God Kalman III, and Rajerd. There was no way it could all be coincidence. Something was most definitely about to happen in the Bahiril Kingdom. No, that wasn't right. Geese was trying to make something happen. Exactly. It was possible this letter was one of Geese's traps. Did he intend to use Rajerd as a shield against Rudius? Had he already won Rajerd to his side? I don't think that's going to be the case. I can't see that. I did kind of suspect it at some point. Like, I could see there a possibility there, but I don't. Rudius had no idea which one it was, but he would find out. Because again, Rudius fixed something in Rajerd that he was stuck in for hundreds of years. It would have to be either I don't see how. Refugian's going to have to pull something out of a hat in order for me to believe that Rajerd would go against Rudius at this point. Because again, Rudius fixed hundreds of years of him being stuck in one place. Hundreds of years of his life and his world being paused. Ain't no way. Unless he promised him a chance at getting Laplace. That's the only way I can see it. And I don't see Rajerd sacrificing Rudius for a chance at Laplace. He wants revenge, but I don't see that being the case. If there was even a possibility that Rajerd was in danger, then he would go. He had to go. The time for preparation was over. It was time for the showdown. Again, I think Geese sees this as a checkpoint. Rudius sees this as the final battle. Rudius sees this as the final battle for Geese, and Geese sees this as the next step before the final battle, which is Orsted. Very interesting. Again, because initially it sort of painted this whole thing with Geese that he was coming after Rudius, that Rudius was the target. But no, it's going back to Orsted. I guess I can see that because I can see that Mangod does not see as it being the only reason that Orsted wins is because of Rudius and thus get rid of Rudius, which he did at some point. He wanted to get rid of Rudius. That was his focus. But now it just seems like it's more of an idea that the two of them both need to be gone. Because I think there is an aspect that the Mangod sees both Orsted and Rudius as an equal threat. Rudius' descendants and Orsted can both make it at my door. I want them both gone. And that's what I was talking about back there when Rudius was contemplating taking out Orsted. I'm like, you do realize that he's still going to have you killed. Even if you kill Orsted, he's going to come after you next. It doesn't fix everything. I think even Rudius at the time was like, if I kill Orsted, you're going to leave me alone, right? The Mangod wasn't even giving him a clear answer, if I remember correctly. And I was saying back then, it was like, you're still going to die. You're both a threat, and he's just having you kill each other. He gets rid of one of them. It's a win-win situation for him, but in the end, he's still going to kill you. If Orsted kills you, he still wants Orsted dead. If you kill Orsted, he's still going to want you dead. Very interesting, though. So yeah, my suspecting here is I think, yes, I do believe that Rajerd's over there. Geese is over there. Unfortunately, the anime does give me an indication that Body Gotti's over there. I hate that. I was watching that last episode of the second season of Mushoku Tensei, and I'm like, why'd you show that? There was no indication in the novels that Body Gotti's walking with Rajerd when he went over there. So Body Gotti could have left him shortly after, but I have a feeling that Body Gotti is going to be up there. Why Body Gotti is staying up there is the question mark. Body Gotti likes to run around everywhere. Why would he stay there with Rajerd after all this time? Could be. I don't know. But yeah, we're gonna have Geese, North God Kalman. I'm wondering how many Rudius is gonna be. Again, this is if Rudius doesn't bring the whole band, it doesn't make any sense because Rudius is saying right now, preparation's over, time for a showdown. He's implying that it's time to go get Ataf. It's time to go get everybody that just not many people that it's indicated so far. He couldn't get Randolph. He's only got Etaf. At this point, Rudius has only recruited Etaf, right? I mean, he's got his wives. I mean, he's got Eris is going to come with him. Probably Roxy's going to come with him. He's going to have Etaf. Possibly Etaf's men will come with him. I wonder if she'll be allowed to go over there. I think he needs to get with Petagoose. I know that Petagoose ain't going to help him, but he might be able to talk Petagoose into it. Hey, if you want my mana, you got to help me out real quickly. Like, just real quickly, just come down there, do some stuff. It'll be over quick. You won't have to stay long. I think there's a good chance he could talk Petagus into it. He needs something else. Rudius has nothing so far. Like, everybody that he said he was going to go meet has turned into failure. He doesn't have much to work with here. And again, it's implying that he only has the North God Kalman to face, but he could have told the Sword God to go there too. He could have everybody going there. He just only told North God Kalman about that, and everybody else is already there. Rudius is kind of screwed right now. I feel like Rudius is kind of screwed right now. Like, he didn't have much time to really set up here. So again, Geese's side, North God Kalman, Sword God. Now, granted, I do see the extra chapter, Geese and his final ally, on my screen right now. I'm wondering if Bodigadi is going to be his final ally, because it's already kind of paying that. And again, because I know that Rajerd at least was walking with Bodigadi when he was traveling to the east, kind of implies that Bodigadi was in the area. And again, it implies that Kishirika is like, Bodigadi is probably going to join him. So I think the last one's going to be Bodigadi. Bodigadi, North God Kalman, and the Sword God, along with Geese. On Rudius' side, Rudius, Roxy, Eris, Etoff. I don't think he'll take Zenoba. He might get with Ariel to see if some of her knights can come. And again, one of them might be actually the other Kalman. One of them might be Kalman the Second. That would be really good. I don't think he's going to do that, though. I don't think in his mind is go to see Ariel. But he needs to. He needs to throw everything he can at this. He needs to go there without the mindset that it's only the North God. Please, Rudius, do not see it as just the North God. It seems to imply that he feels like he's ready and this is all being set up for the fight. He needs to know that there is a lot going to be over there. Who else can he take? Again, I think he needs to talk to Petagus. He really does. He might be able to get Ghislaine. I would probably go to see if Gino Britz is possibly available again. I would totally get that into the picture. Go check out the Sword Sanctum really quick again. He doesn't have much time. That's the problem. He doesn't have time to run everywhere and pick up a bunch of people. That's the biggest problem that he's facing right now. I think that's all of his options right now. Orsted, unfortunately, can't go with him because, again, this whole point is not to bring Orsted. His whole point right now is to not rely on Orsted because of that mana. But I do think that Orsted needs to come and watch from a distance. Because no matter how you cut it, Orsted needs to be involved some way as little as possible. Even if he has to just come in there every now and then and poke. Like he did with them in Asra. Just come in every now and then and poke. It's not going to take much effort from you. Come in and poke. Come in and make donuts every now and then. But again, I hope that doesn't turn into some crap where he somehow manages to talk Rajerd into this. I really hope. And it could be an aspect of when he gets there, he might hope that Rajerd will immediately see him and join his side and go against them. But again, I'm still kind of, there's still like a thing in the back of my head that kind of wonders about the whole situation with the Sword God. And the idea that when Geese recruited him, he said something felt off. He felt something ominous or something like that. I forget exactly how he said it, but something was off. Like there was a trick here they're missing. And at the time, I kind of wondered if it was going to turn into a thing where the Sword God will kill everybody on Geese's side for the sake of having Orsted to himself. And I still kind of wonder if that will turn into a thing. That would be a really nice little twist there. But yeah, that's all kind of turning it into the possibility that going into Volume 24, they'll wrap up the stuff with Geese. Again, spoiler, because I see the extra chapter Geese and his final ally. I kind of feel like I wonder if with this final extra chapter, which typically extra chapters aren't like main story stuff, so I would assume that the battle's not going to be an extra chapter. That makes me believe that Geese gets his final ally with this extra chapter. Then going into 24, we could have like maybe a quarter, a third, or maybe half of the volume is given to the setup and the build up to the fight, and then the fight happens. So possibly wrapping up that fight with Geese in Volume 24. And that gives us 25 and 26 to kind of build into possibly the final fight with the Man God, or lack thereof. Or lack thereof, if there's a kind of flip here where we get, some stupid twist like, oh, in the end, it was actually the Dragon God's what's going to destroy everything, and it's actually the Man God that was looking out for everybody. The Man God was actually the good person, and he was trying to prevent the destruction of the world. Because, yeah, somebody was destroying all the sides of the world, and the Man God was one holding it all together. Something stupid like that. It's all going to happen. We'll see. I have faith in Refugian to make it very, very interesting no matter what. But anyhow, that's chapter 10. I'm actually surprised that I actually got through that. That might mean that next week, extra chapter might be a quick Mushoku Monday. We'll see. I was kind of torn between doing 9 and 10 and then extra, or doing 9 and then 10 and extra. Whatever happens. We'll see. But anyhow, that's it for this Mushoku Monday. I forgot to show you guys, for those that missed the live stream, I did get this. This is actually now finally a thing. I said it was going to happen, and it happened. It's gorgeous. Are you all jelly? Are you all jelly? I have to keep it hidden, like, right here for now, because, like, it's obviously spoilers, but I don't know, season 4, whenever it airs in, I don't know, like 15 years, I'll be able to put it somewhere up here. But for now, it's gorgeous, and I love it. So that is it for this Mushoku Monday. Thank you guys so much for dropping by for the premiere. Hey, chat, hope you guys are well. Hope you guys had a fun time with this Mushoku Monday. I think I talked way more than I thought I would, especially with Chapter 9. Holy crap, got emotional. But as per usual, greatly appreciate you guys' support. Thank you guys so much for your, kind words, for being here, sharing this out, hitting the like button. It's free. Do it. It's like somewhere around here, I think, on your screen, down here. Hit it. Hit it. It's free. It supports the channel. It helps us out. Thank you guys so much for sharing it out to your friends. All the ways that you guys help support the channel. It means so much to me. Without your guys' support, this would never happen. And yes, as per usual, greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. Thank you guys so much. You guys are amazing. And until the next Mushoku Monday, y'all take care. Randolph's finger. Randolph's...
Doubtless a moron. Doubtless you're a moron. Doubtless you're a moron. A moron amongst the morons. Even you must understand that. All someone has to do is dangle something promising in front of you. And you haven't got the brains to think twice about it.
Etoph shook her head vigorously.
That's not true. Cal said I was...
I'm getting these backwards. That would have caused some squirrels.